I don't know. Maybe this is something I do because being with myself. I need to think about that because I was talking recently with people about concept of just being alone with yourself, and like we think we do it all the time, but do you live alone?
I don't.
If you like as someone who lives alone, on the surface, I think, yeah, I'm with myself all the time. Like I'm not around people. Maybe I'm around people 50% of the time, but then I'm alone with myself. But then it's not really, because what am I doing when I'm alone in my house? And the answer is I'm on my computer, I'm editing videos, I'm preparing stuff for my students, I'm listening to something, I'm watching something. How alone is that? Mm-hmm. And so when you start thinking about it, it's like, how often are we sitting with ourselves but doing nothing? Like we don't have our phone and our eyes are open or closed and like we're doing nothing else. We're just with us and our thoughts.
Yeah, I would say if you don't keep any form of Shabbat, the Jewish Sabbath, then the likelihood that you spend real time alone and unplugged is very low.
But even on Shabbat, playing devil's advocate, you're either with a bunch of people, and if you're not with people, you're reading a book.
Okay, fine. So then the question is, what does it actually mean to be alone with your thoughts? Like, what does that mean?
That's it. Nothing else. If there's anything beyond my thoughts, be it a newspaper, a book, a magazine, other people.
Okay, so not engaging in anything other than whatever is flowing in or being pushed out of your own.
Exactly. In a situation where I'm able to receive my thoughts and think about them, which is like, how often do we get to do that? Many people live alone. Many people spend time alone. Many people drive for hours alone, but the mind isn't there.
Oh, yeah. No, I definitely know for me, there are times when I specifically want to have zero stimulus and just sit. And sometimes it could be for probably if I'm realistic, not more than a half hour, but most of the time, even if I'm in the shower, I put my phone up on YouTube in the corner so the sound will resonate,
I
you
do
know.
the same thing.
And so I'll watch, and sometimes I'm watching comedy, sometimes I'm watching, you know, news that I don't need to learn anything about because it's not helping my life at all. And I've noticed that, you know, as we become more and more and more dependent on the phone and everything, it's like, yeah, like people, they wouldn't want to, you know, go to the bathroom without their phone, you know, which is like crazy. It used to be the quiet place, you know, the quiet throne.
It's crazy. Now it's like where people watch their YouTube.
Yeah.
It's insane. I actually started not taking my phone to the bathroom.
It's a good move.
Yeah. I started that to, 1, quit porn, and 2, to just not sit on the toilet for so long. I heard from, what do you call butt doctors? Proctologist. I knew the name once. I was talking to this proctologist, and he was saying that it's not good to sit on the toilet for a long time, which was interesting to me because I sit on other chairs for a long time. So trying to figure that whole thing out. But apparently there's something to do with...
Well, I would say that it's probably not good to sit in general for a long time. Like
I get that. Yeah.
So like I listened to this guy, the Huberman Lab podcast, slightly bigger than either of our podcasts.
What's it about?
He's a neurologist and ophthalmologist. So everything that has to do with the eye and the brain, and then all of your behavior, like each week is like a new thing. And what he talks a lot about is, you know, getting sunlight in the morning and then at different stages throughout the day and also seeing the sunset. But that when you sit, same like if you look down, your energy and your confidence tends to go down. Just like they always tell you, like, keep your chin up. Huh. So if people keep their screen at their computer a little bit elevated, your energy levels will stay up slightly. So it's just interesting how these little things, and then, you know, you can, I don't know, I feel like I've become a neurologist listening to this guy. So it's like there is some advantage to having all of this information, but then there's like, how do you then deal with the absence of it and the void?
It's difficult.
Yeah.
Actually, 2 podcasts ago, I had a neurologist on here.
Oh, yeah?
He showed up in the white robe.
Oh, wow. Well, that's how you know he's real. I might actually go to this guy's event. He has an event in Seattle in May. I may go.
Neurologist.
Yeah.
It was interesting. We're talking about, he taught me about not seizures. Yeah, seizures, epilepsy, dementia, Alzheimer's. I learned a lot. It was headaches. It was fascinating. I mean, apparently neurologists are problem solvers through effective questioning, and it's all about diagnosis. Like he's not a surgeon,
Right.
but it was interesting. Like it's a lot of, you become really good at getting to the problem, because someone shows up to you with a headache. Where do you start? You know what I mean? So apparently someone who's trained in neurology, I'm obviously way simplifying this down, but generally speaking, as time goes on, you become better and better and better at question asking, at getting to the point, at canceling some things out and narrowing down what the problem is. So it was pretty cool how, different fields. I mean, I'm looking forward to talk with other medical people because it's so interesting. I mean,
you gotta get Adam Balcony on this program.
I know. I got to get him fly him down here.
You get some Chabad, some anesthesia, some a little bit of everything.
That's another.
Well, he'll be around in Pesach. You'll have to schlep.
Is
him
he coming?
Up here.
Oh, he's going to Palm Springs.
I think so.
I gotcha. Yeah.
We'll have to bleep his name out. No.
Bleep his name out. No.
So there's no intro to this podcast. We just start with the vodka and ice in the glass.
Cheers, L'chaim. Yeah. I don't like intros.
Okay.
Some people are hard on me with that. They say, "Hey, you need an intro." I don't know. I one of the things I very much try hard to capture in these conversations with people is the realness. It's a conversation that I would have with you if the cameras were off and the mic was off. But
we would have headphones.
We wouldn't have headphones.
Oh, okay.
And we wouldn't be sitting close to these mics.
Touching this foam.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But I feel like an intro takes a lot away from that. And I've done with and without with people, and it also affects the whole. Because you'll find, it's interesting, there's some people who are more, typically it's the people who are more self-conscious and calling camera shy and whatever, and following a proper introduction.
Well, yeah, it makes them think. It makes them think too much. Yeah.
It frames them in a corner. It puts them on stage, right?
Yeah.
The lights are on, cameras are rolling. We got to be on right now.
Yeah.
As opposed to, and I don't always know who sits in front of me. I can't know. It could be someone who's cool and in real life, but then you put them in that chair and all of a sudden they're camera shy, and that's fine. And so being in that position, I don't always know. I just find that if we just keep it rolling like we would do in any other circumstance, we're never on.
Yeah.
And if you're never on, you have much more room to be real.
Do you ever come with questions in the back of your mind that you're like, I kind of want to get to it with this person?
I do. But it so doesn't run the show.
Yeah.
Actually, the neurologist was the first one who I printed out some medical terms that I knew he deals with in his field, because I wanted to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to make sure, okay, I don't want to miss this.
Gotcha.
So I'll have it, on a paper in front of me. But generally speaking, it's really I think the beautiful thing to conversations is the places they could go.
Yeah, I agree.
I see it as getting into your car. Have you ever you needed just a break, and you got into your car and decided you need to drive?
Oh, yeah.
No destination.
Or walk. Yeah.
No destination.
Yeah.
I see it very much the same way. It's taking a drive without a destination, and it's just like, let's see what freeways we get onto. Let's see what neighborhoods we pass. And that's how I see it.
Okay.
And it's amazing where you end up with people, and that's the beauty of it.
Right, it's just for the sake of sitting down and chatting and having slightly different people, just to see where that leads.
It's just where it goes.
Yeah. Okay.
And I learned, believe me, I probably learned more than anyone, because I'm the one.
No, I know, that's what I loved about it, is being on that side of it. You usually listen the most, and you usually get to hear, from other people, and you're kind of forced to listen, which, again, going back to like the conversation thing, sometimes we could be talking. If your phone was out and you've got a job to go to or whatever, it's like, I do this too many times, and I'm like, oh, yeah, cool. And it's like I'm texting someone else to arrange the next call or whatever I got to do. And this is, it's nice.
Yeah, it's a different setting. So we talked before we started, sat down, And so this could be an interesting thing to talk about, because when I'm thinking about the amount of people I had on here who, and by the way, before I say that, to what you just said, you say many times you listen a lot. Many times the conversation turns into more of a back and forth.
Yeah.
Which is amazing, because you get both of the sides. You get the people who talk and okay, I don't want to say anything. I want to get every single word they say. And then there's the other people who it's back and forth. But we were talking. So I actually didn't know this about you, that you were married.
I was married.
Just like me. So we're both divorced. I just learned that like 15 minutes ago. So how long ago was this, or how long did it last, the marriage?
How long of the version of the story do you want to hear? The marriage itself lasted a year and a half.
Okay, so mine was 8 months. Okay, so you got some time on me.
Yeah, I had a little bit of extra whirlwind. No, I mean, first of all, I would never say anything bad about her family. I really did get along great with the family. It was a very unique situation. We were both pretty young, and I was studying abroad in Australia in my junior year of college. Fell in love with Australia. Fell in love with an Australian.
Oh, so this was over there.
Yeah, and so then I kind of knew, regardless of what was going to happen with that relationship, that I wanted to move back there. But the relationship persisted through my last year of college, and I was gung-ho, ready to go. And so I moved there. I found work right away. Then that looked like it wasn't going to happen, and I was like 2 months away from getting married. And I was like, oh, shit, can you swear? Yeah.
You could say anything you want.
I don't know. It's 2022.
I'll go even further. There's some videos. There was this YouTube video. There's a clip of one of my guests, and she's a therapist, and we were talking about porn and porn addiction, and so much so that YouTube
put a stamp on
it's fine to post it, but I can't monetize. I can't make money from the ads, but I don't care.
Yeah. I mean,
whatever.
It also seems like you're really in this for the sake of doing it. If over time it leads somewhere.
Well, it's really, like I said, it's my hobby.
Yeah.
I really enjoy. This is my time off. Like, we're sitting here with vodka. I can't do this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When I'm working with clients.
I'm a creative, so like drinking or drugs on set. I mean, I'm not saying that should happen. Just saying it sometimes does happen.
Yeah. There you go. And it's you know what it is too? It's like we're catching up, and it's more of a I heard someone say this once, specifically referring to people, creating like content. And it's so true. And I so resonate with that. He was talking about the difference between recording and documenting. And he said so many people approach this space from a standpoint of, ooh, what could I make a video about? And they go crazy. And it's like, I don't have a topic and I need to figure it out and I need to be perfect. And so few people show up to it and say, what am I already doing in my life that I could simply just whip a camera on and share it with the world? In other words, I'm not creating anything new. It's already happening.
Yeah.
I just need to turn the camera on.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to get a little good lighting for it, because otherwise there's not good lighting. Maybe the audio should be better because, but what am I already doing in my life that I could, rather than create or record, I can simply document? And that completely changes the whole attitude about stuff, and I feel like I'm very much doing that.
Do you, just curious, because I'm always curious as to like people's real passions, if this was able to financially replace teaching new pilots and private pilot, whatever your hustles.
The answer is no, but you could ask the question.
This would never take over that passion. I didn't think so, because as long as I've known you, which I don't even, few years now, whatever, however many years, that was the one thing, like, you're like, I work on planes, but I want to be flying them,
I 100%. 100%. Yeah, I consider myself to be a lucky person, and that is precisely because I get to do pretty much every day the exact thing. Think about this, the exact thing that I dreamt to do as a child. And I personally, maybe they exist. I don't meet people like that every day. And when I do, I consider them too to be lucky. And I think it's an amazing thing. And I think that I'm thankful that I'm able to even be so aware of it and appreciate it, because it could so easily just go over my head and it's like, okay, this is what I do for work, and it does get mundane and it is a job at the end of the day, blah blah blah. But after all of that, I'm doing what I wanted to do as a 8-year-old.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like,
No,
whoa.
I had that moment when I was making Knife Corp, the movie. Like, when you're directing probably any movie, but definitely a low-budget indie movie, and definitely a low-budget indie movie where you don't have enough days really to shoot what you need to shoot, and definitely a movie where there wasn't enough prep done, and all these things. And, like, you are essentially like a personality negotiator. Everybody, you're a mom, a dad, a CEO, and all of these things all at once for at least 12 hours a day. For also at least about 20 to 30 people, depending on the size of your set, yada yada. But I remember that at the end of each day, no matter how crazy it was, and no matter how crazy I knew the next day was going to be, it was for me the first time, because I had always dreamed about making movies, I was like, this is exactly the place I'm supposed to be. So, and I'm not a great sleeper, but I slept well during that time, because there was nothing else. Whereas, like, there's been times when I've been teaching and trying to write, and there's been times when I was doing solar energy and trying to write, and so there's always this is the thing that I'm doing, but this is the thing I want to be at. And then it was like, that was the moment where I was like, oh, this is it. I'm thankful now I have a job where I'm a full-time content creator. I also get opportunities to create the projects I'm super passionate about. So it's like, I do, especially when I'm getting down on things, I'm like, wait a second. I'm working a block from the beach with super smart people who are building huge businesses and interesting opportunities and projects. And I'm doing the thing that I said I wanted to do 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, coming up with taglines for businesses and jingles just out of the top of my head, because that's how my brain works. So it's like, oh, and they're paying me, so like, it's cool.
Surreal.
Yeah. And it's, I'm glad you said that, because I've also talked to other people where I was like, if you didn't need the money, what would you do? They're like, well, I wouldn't work. And I was like, that to me is crazy. Because I was like, oh, if like raising money for a movie or a TV show wasn't a challenge, I would just be there. I mean, I'd take a break to be with family or friends, but I would be thrilled every day. You know what I mean? It's like, if you could basically teach the kind of class you want to teach and fly where you want to, and gas wasn't a thing, and all these clear, it's like, it'd be pretty cool. So no, I'm glad you said it, but I'm also glad that you do this, because it's fun.
Hobbies are important, and it's people straight up ask me, what's your hobby? What's your hobbies? And this is very much a huge one of them.
What are the other ones?
I enjoy, believe it or not, this will sound crazy to you, I consider the video editing part as a hobby too.
Oh,
it has become one.
It's because it's not your job, my friend.
It's because it's not my job.
No.
It could be. Maybe.
No, it is. The truth is, editing is fun, but it can be.
It could be, yeah. The thing I enjoy about it, so I use Adobe, whatever you, and the thing I enjoy about it is just the amount of new stuff that I could learn. Like, it's an endless world. Yeah. So that recently has become a hobby. Like, I actually enjoyed the process of doing that. But what other hobbies do I have? Yeah, believe it or not, this day and age, other than I wish I had more time in the day, but I'm busy with. I'd be lying if I said that I had a lot of downtime. But I'm either teaching, doing this, editing this, sleeping.
Seeing a friend here or there.
Exactly, and there's not a lot of time left, which I'm fine with, because, listen, I'm all about goals, and I'm all about building stuff, and sometimes to get to the next place, you just have to, sacrifice. And maybe I don't have 8 hours free a day as maybe I would want to have, but I'm doing that so I could.
I don't know if it's the best thing for men to have.
Probably
8 hours
not.
Free a day.
Right. Probably not.
Women. I think women can handle it. I think men at our age, it's not always the best.
It's interesting. We're talking about free time. I actually discovered. I'm curious what you think of this. And by the way, we'll get to your marriage soon. I do very much want to talk about it. No, I want to talk about it. There's a lot to it. But I discovered that my, what's the word? Kryptonite. The thing that is the worst thing for me is downtime, free time on my hand. I wouldn't even say boredom. because when you have free time, you're not necessarily bored. You just fill it with stuff that maybe you shouldn't fill it with. But free time for me is something that I discovered.
I mean, you've mentioned the porn addiction thing. Is
Right.
that part of it, or what? Like, what's the like? In what sense?
So I wouldn't. So when it comes to, here's the thing. I was talking about this with lots of people recently. How many things? I don't know you in porn or what? If yes, what age? But I just know me and I know my friends, and for the most part, we all started watching porn not when we were 25. We started when we were around 10, which is insane.
How old are you?
29.
Oh, you're younger than me.
Yeah.
Okay, that's young.
Yeah.
Because to me, at let's say 10 or early teens, it was mostly magazines if your friend's dad had them,
Did that too.
or maybe a JPEG in an email if your friend was like so good at like the internet back then. That was basically through high school. I'm trying to think of when in my world porn like hit. I can't believe it. And I know my parents will watch this. Here we are talking about porn.
I mean, here's the thing.
I mean, I don't, it's believe me. Lately, they've heard a lot about my life lately because
No, but here's the thing about porn in general. For anyone listening out there, but really, it's just it's the more we go about life, not us, but the more people go about life, specifically parents, looking the other way as if it doesn't happen.
yeah. Well, I would say like my parents didn't have to deal with it as much because it hadn't hit what it is now. You know, like where it's almost expected when you talk to a man over the age of, well, I guess, or a boy over the age of 12. You know, it's like it's almost expected. And then it's like varying degrees to which you engage. I will say I'm pretty sure I'm not addicted, and I would say it's definitely not a daily thing, and usually probably not even a weekly thing. So I'm very happy. That said, going back to like the idle hands, you know, kind of the free time, I don't know if it's like porn as much as like I might crave sugar. I might go far for sugar, and sugar actually makes me feel like shit when I eat it.
Whoa.
So I have like different things that drive me to do stupid behavior that I will say, honestly, in the last year is really when I finally started to dig into it, partially because of a breakup, partially because of a lot of pretty cool therapy that I was doing, and then just like you know, we were talking about vodka or versus cannabis or whatever. Like, cannabis is more my thing. You know, if there was a real vice that has been my either problem or comma throughout all the sentences of the last, I don't know, 10 years,
Right.
that would be the one. And then I was actually smoking with a woman who was like becoming a therapist, and she was telling me, she was like, and this is when I was watching this podcast and I was learning a lot about dopamine in the brain, and she's saying that people with ADHD have low levels of dopamine.
Huh.
And so dopamine, on the very simple level, it's usually like something that motivates you, something that gets you super like amped for something. And so for me, I was like, oh, I noticed like, yeah, in the moment of things when other people are like, this is so great, I'm like, you know, and I have like kind of this like nagging feeling in my brain always, and I've always had it, where it's like, this is cool, but, you know, and I'm ambitious in that way, but it's also can be very exhausting. And as soon as I learned that, because this other thing I learned about dopamine, which was interesting, which I think is relatable to anyone, which is with dopamine or almost any neurotransmitter, there's always a counter hit to your brain. So dopamine is usually associated with pleasure. So like if you have something you're really craving, or you see someone you haven't seen in a long time, you get a big dopamine rush. And the first time you get that rush or that hit, it's like 9 parts dopamine, 1 part whatever the counter to dopamine is, which is a little bit of pain. The next time it goes 8 to 2. And so if you think about, like, if you really wanted a cookie, which is my vice, chocolate chip cookies are my vice. that first bite of a cookie that you drove out to go get or you baked or whatever, it's like, oh my God.
Right.
And then the second one, you're like, why am I still eating this? And the third, you're like, what am I doing? And then you keep going and you keep going and you keep going. And so when I learned that was maybe what was causing me to like push myself towards smoking or push myself towards sugar or sex sometimes, not necessarily porn, but sex, like it, I realized it's like, okay, this is what my brain is telling me to do. I also have the ability to say no. I may have to come up with strategies and techniques and I may fail, but it's like, to me, it's always like knowing something gives me that tool to be able to like work on it, you know? And sometimes I think we do a lot of things without really understanding why or what's causing it.
Gosh,
and so, so I'm kind of curious. I know you're asking me questions. I'm kind of curious about the porn. I'm kind of curious. I'm kind of curious about the porn addiction because you're not the only person that I know personally or know of. And was that something specifically that impacted your marriage, or was it just you, or is it just
Great
you,
question.
like something that like you deal with or have dealt with? Or
Great question. So I think it's hard for anyone who has watched porn in their life to specifically and confidently say, yes, porn had something to do with that, and it had nothing to do with that. And I think porn is that thing that spills into and over many things. It's like water, and it's hard to specifically connect. Right,
cracks,
it's hard to connect the dots. So if I sat here and said porn had nothing to do with my marriage coming to an end, I'd probably be.
Were you watching porn?
So when I first started out, I never realized how addicted I was. When I first started out, and even leading up to it, I'll never forget, I told myself, you know what? And this is one of the reasons, by the way, why I'm so thankful to having gone through it and divorced and really learned so much. But leading up to the marriage, I remember I was watching porn. And then one day I was telling myself, I said, you know what? I heard from all these people, and I could even see how this wouldn't be good for a marriage. And I said, I'm not watching porn. And I didn't watch porn. And then I got married, and it shouldn't have happened for reasons that have
Meaning you shouldn't have been married to begin with?
Oh my gosh, 100%.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. I'm far from being someone who married someone who was sort of okay, and then we messed things up. Not the case at all.
I do want to hear that story. I don't know if it's a podcast story, but
no, I'm completely open, and I'd love to share it with you. But specifically with the porn, I did not leading up to it, and then I did not after we got married, and I was still very much sticking with this. And then things happen.
How did you stop?
And decision, choice.
But how were you able to sustain that decision?
It was, believe it or not, it was the longest I've gone without it leading up to the marriage. Because here's the thing. I was about to get married, or at least I knew I was.
Right. It was a very clear.
It was a clear thing, and and I'm not someone to like half-ass anything. And I was like, okay, this is my life, this is my marriage, this is my wife. Mm-hmm. This is going to be the mother of my kids. Like, this is a big deal. This is not, a competition I'm doing with someone. How long I could go without porn? It was like a big thing that was important to me. And so, and this is the thing. When I decide something, I decided. I mean, I used to smoke cigarettes. I quit, 8-9 years ago, and it's kind of weird to say, but it was a decision. I used to smoke a lot, and I just said,
it is a cigarette, my friend.
Cigarette, yeah. I used to smoke a lot.
Cigarette, okay.
Yeah, and I just said, I don't want to. I know we're going off track, but I'll get back to the porn thing in the marriage.
Yeah.
I actually heard this while I was smoking. I heard a story. There was this. I forget the name of the rabbi. Years ago, everyone used to smoke, and he went to his doctor one day, and his doctor made him aware that cigarettes are not healthy. Apparently, this was during that time in the world where they were just figuring it out. And this older rabbi, used to smoke a lot and for a long time.
They all did.
They all did.
Yeah.
And the moment he heard his doctor tell him that it's not healthy and he shouldn't do it, he took out his pack of cigarettes and said, okay, that's it. I'm no longer smoking. And he never smoked again. And years later, someone asked him, like, how do you do that? How do you, like, I don't know how many packs he smoked, but how do you just go from... And so he said something very interesting, which stuck with me. And I can't remember if it was part of me stopping, or I'm sure it helped me. But he said he was talking about the decision making, and he said, if we think about it, who has a difficult time in this world not smoking a cigarette? Is it smokers or non-smokers? The answer, smokers.
Right. He changed his idea. He changed the way he saw himself.
Exactly. So he said, a decision takes a split of a second. And he said, in a split of a second, I've gone from being a smoker to being a non-smoker. And he said, the people in this world who have the easiest time not craving a cigarette are non-smokers.
Yeah.
And in a split of a second, I became a non-smoker. And because I'm as a non-smoker, I don't crave a cigarette, which was amazing. And it's so true. So I heard that. I can't remember if it was part of my...
Yeah, no, it was interesting. I had a similar feeling in the summer when I heard that. It literally switched my brain.
You've heard this before?
Well, when I heard the thing about the dopamine, which was it had the same impact on me, which was I didn't come up with a timeline as to like, okay, I'm going to not smoke this week, or I'm not going to smoke for a month, or, some of this was related to my past relationship where I felt like I still had work that I needed to do for myself, but I was very avoidant to do it for her because if it wasn't for me, and also when you're kind of addicted to something, you'll tell yourself any story to continue that behavior.
Right.
And but then I heard it and it was like, oh, this made sense for me, and and it was something that I had been kind of pushing off, thinking about, wondering and delaying, and then all of a sudden it was so clear, and then it like my friends who they'd be like, hey, you want to hang out, you want to smoke, and I'd be like, I'm not smoking. They're like, well, how long are you doing this? I was like, I don't know. And for a long time, once the first week was over, which is it is difficult. I won't lie to anyone who's dealing with cannabis stuff. Like, it's not easy, but I was happy. You know what I mean? And I remember that like the first 3 days sucked. Sleeping was really hard. Blah 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 blah. Like going home and having nothing to do is really challenging. But you figure it out. You have more energy. You have more. You're more excited for things. And then you just got to find other things to fill those gaps and realize like, yeah, your brain is telling you to go do something. You can not do that and you can do something else, or you can, but it was kind of like, yeah, I'm not the guy who smokes weed in the morning before I go to work or before I do this, or, well, shout out to my people that I work with, but, it's like, I get my job done. No, but I'm not doing it anymore, so it's, right. And it did sort of change my identity without realizing that, but I like that approach. Is like, you just sort of say, no, that's not who I am.
It's not who I am. Yeah.
Yeah. The story you tell yourself is a pretty important one.
100%. I mean, and it's a chicken and an egg question. Am I craving it because of who I am, or am I who I am because I'm craving it? And I really think, I think that the answer to the chicken and the egg is personal preference. And I also think that the answer to, am I craving it because of who I am, or am I who I am because I'm craving it? That might as well be personal preference too. Why not?
It's always, I mean, I don't know. To me, it's like, I heard someone say, I know it's kind of a famous quote, but it was like, a goal without a plan is a wish. Right?
I like it.
Right. Whereas, so like, you may want to fix a behavior, but like you were talking about, a decision is something that you make. Doesn't mean you stick to it necessarily, but it depends if your reasoning for that decision was, I am no longer that person, and I really believe that, and you really set your mindset to that, it's going to impact you, and it's going to make it harder to maybe even go back. In fact, I remember the first time I smoked after stopping, I was very hesitant, but there was a reason why I did it, and the exact feeling of angst and nerves and self-loathing and basically what had ruined my previous relationship came back, and I hadn't felt even anything similar to that for a month. And it fucking sucked.
Yeah.
And I was like, why am I such an idiot? But yeah, it's a fascinating, addiction is a fascinating thing. And when your brain gets hooked into one direction, it's a fascinating thing. I just had a conversation with a friend yesterday. She's come a long way with her own addiction, and she wanted to reach out to me to like make amends. And to me, I actually had no I had no resentment or like I wasn't harboring any feelings of ill will towards her at all. In fact, she was like a really great friend of me when I moved to LA. But I understood from where she was coming from. She felt like she had dropped the ball, and but like this, I thanked her. I was like, I didn't have any issue. Like I've always seen you as a friend. I was like, I'm really happy that you're happy. But it was also nice to like sit with someone with a very focused, real conversation. I was like, I'm glad like you still feel that you can be honest with me, you know, and like, because to me, I hate small talk, so this is fine for me, you know. But yeah, it was really nice, very affirming, and then also it was like it's one of those things where when you're dealing with your own stuff and then someone comes to you, you're like, oh, now I have a real friend that I can also kind of go back and confide. And I know I think it can be hard. So you made that decision. Have you stayed away
No, so back to the marriage thing. I made that decision. Then I got married. I stayed away from it. And then things happened in the marriage. And towards the end of the marriage.
Where were you married? In Seattle?
No, I was married here in LA.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. And then towards the end of the marriage, I think the whole, and this is again, hindsight's 2020, but I think that the whole, okay, what the heck, I'll watch porn attitude came back to me when I really realized that this is a situation I shouldn't be in, and probably was feeling down on myself. You know, it was just, I learned so much about what a human being feels like when they're in a shit situation. Like I learned how my body feels. I learned my heart rate. I learned so much.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And then I sort of found myself, okay, I'm back with porn. And at first it scared me and I felt, you know, guilty and the whole thing. But again, it's no different. It's an addiction, and people you have to treat it as such, and you have to look at it that way. And so I'm thankful I, you know, brought the marriage came to an end. And even this is why I'm curious to talk about you with your marriage in a little bit. But during the marriage, after we got married, I quickly realized, okay, this shouldn't have happened. I even knew beforehand.
You're talking about the marriage,
the marriage itself.
Yeah.
And I told myself, this is how it came to an end. And from the very beginning, I told myself, I'm ending this the day I can look myself in the mirror and confidently, or as confidently as I can get, tell myself that in 60 years, I won't look back and regret this. And it took me 8 months to get there, because on month number 7, I couldn't look myself in the mirror and with a straight face say that. And 8 months in, I was able to say that. And I said, okay. And I made it happen. And it also happened to be the amount of time that for me personally, I felt that I've given it the time. Some people, in their situation, it meant that time would have been 2 years. Some people, but I've given it the time.
It's very arbitrary, you know.
Very arbitrary.
Yeah.
And so I was able to sort of do that. But the blessing of divorce, on the other hand, which I learned so much from too, is that on the other side of it, you find yourself, and unless you're divorced, you don't get this type of learning, right? Is that on the other side of divorce, you find yourself alone in front of a mirror, naked in the emotional and sense of the word, and you have all the time in the world to think and reflect about things. And hindsight's 2020, so you have that vantage point that you didn't have in the marriage, and that's really after the divorce where I would say most of my personal inner growth, if you want to call it that, but really just self-awareness and learning about myself and who am I and why does porn why does it
nag at you like the way it does? And
and that's where, for me, I know many people say,
is that your main vice? It's that, because it's the only thing that's really come up.
It's actually not a vice for me, believe it or not.
Okay. I mean, I don't know what to call it.
It's something that, here's the problem with porn for me personally.
Yeah.
You know, people say they're addicted to a specific type of porn, like dark stuff. I'm so thankful I've never even thought in that direction. I'm thankful. But here's where porn becomes a problem for me. Married or not, Jewish or not, religious or not.
Yeah.
Here's where, for me personally, and this is the other thing about porn, I think porn affects and is bad for different people in different ways. I think one person it's bad because of what type of porn they watch, and for another person it's bad because it does other things. For me personally, watching porn causes me to carry around an inner shame, a certain shame that negatively affects my life, my energy, my everything. And that's what I never liked about it. That's what I still hate about it. And that's why I'm so, I've never had a problem talking with it openly, because we all watch porn. It's not something that I like. Since I was 18, I think the light bulb went off in my head that everyone watch porn. And if you don't watch porn, then you're, God bless you. And that's just one of those things.
Right, you're a unicorn.
Exactly. But yeah, for me, that's the inner shame, and that's the thing that is not helpful in any circumstance, married or not, or whatever.
It's interesting. It's interesting because you say inner shame, and yet, and maybe it's because I also brought it out in the conversation, but you're very comfortable and open about it, and I think most people aren't. Like, I think most people would either kind of do it in a prideful way.
What do you mean?
Where they have zero fucks given, for lack of a better term, where it's just like, yeah, I watch porn, I love porn, I like this, you know what I mean? I'm into this, I'm into that, and I watch it with my girlfriend, or I watch it with my, it's like there's no issue.
Yeah.
And then there's people who won't talk about it at all because they're too shy or embarrassed.
Right.
And then there's you, where like you say it's like a perpetual self-loathing that you kept perpetuating in your life, and yet you have no shame to talk about it, which is it's just interesting because it brought you shame, but you don't have any shame talking about it, which is good. It's just an observation. It was
totally.
kind of, yeah.
And so I guess I should elaborate. The shame I'm specifically talking about, so it's not shame of talking about it. I'm an open book. But it's the shame that comes from, and maybe shame's not a good word, but it's that same negative energy that you would carry at the end of a day when you woke up that morning and you said, today I'm doing XYZ, and you go to sleep that night and you didn't do XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
You know that feeling of like, I'm good for nothing, but it's like, I can't even keep my own word. That's what I'm talking about. And that negatively affects my psyche. So it's not a shame of talking about it. I'll talk about it all day, but it's more of an interpersonal thing for me.
Okay, I'm curious, and we can totally get off this topic. But
oh my gosh, I'm
just
open
curious.
to talk about anything.
Well, this is the problem when you have two people who like to get people's stories. This is what happens.
Let's do it.
You had kind of started what sounds like a pretty robust porn consumption from a young age. Like before you were really interested in women.
100%.
Like, especially women your age. So I'm curious, between, let's say, 15 to your marriage, did you have multiple healthy, sexually active relationships or not?
That's an interesting question. Not really, and here's why. I was talking about this with someone the other day.
On the pod or just
off the pod,
just
actually.
Normal conversation. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm glad we're not repeating.
No, I was talking about my life here in the States. So I'm Jewish.
Yes.
And not religious, but one thing.
You grew up in Israel?
Yeah, I grew up religious in Israel.
Okay.
But not religious today. And I've been here in the States for 11 years now. And regardless of how religious or not, I've never really been religious, but regardless of how close or not close to the religion, I found myself, one thing was a non-negotiable, and that was for me to marry a non-Jew. It was just my thing.
Meaning that you would not
I would never marry a non-Jew.
Okay.
So if you think about it, my life since I moved here, 98% of it has been composed of non-Jews. It's just by how things worked out. Like I've been a flight attendant, and if you just think of my bubble, it's filled with mostly non-Jews. So the 1% and 2% that are Jewish, half of them are male, the other half are over 40. So it really leaves me with very few even interactions. Forget going out on a date, just coming across a potential Jewish woman who, and that really, again, in hindsight, left me in a very interesting space. And it took me years to realize what was happening, but it left me in a space where I was meeting people. I do live in the world. I am attracted to people. I am attracted to stuff. I'm a human being.
Yeah.
And so it left me sort of being pulled inside in two directions. On the one hand, I want to pursue something with someone, like we click, she'd be an amazing mom, like whatever it might be. And on the other hand, she's not Jewish. And so over the years,
Don't I know it.
yeah, there you go. And so over the years, I found myself in what I call gas brake, it's almost like standstill traffic.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I never really was in what I personally consider a serious relationship. Because to me, a serious relationship is one where I could see a marriage. I could see it.
Well, see a marriage, but also, the reason I asked about the sexual component was, you started, like what I've heard is like, they're saying like, I think it's in like maybe Korea and Japan and parts of China, where those kids have like grown up on video games, porn, virtual porn, whatever, that the statistics are showing that like teenage boys would almost rather watch porn than, and they're getting erectile dysfunction as teenagers versus having that
I believe that, yes,
live experience. And that's why I was asking, because like, and that's why I'm sort of grateful that I had JPEGs and magazines and very sparing as, and so I had the even if my parents didn't like it, I had the advantage of being a teenage boy in a small Jewish high school, but hormones raging and meeting girls and figuring it out, you know what I mean, versus like letting porn kind of teach you. I could see an argument that in a healthy relationship you could invite in some ways porn in, and it's like, but I think if it's what you know about sex, it, especially when you're a 10-year-old boy, it's like you again, the things that you see in those videos versus what happens in reality, forgetting about the way people look or the fact that it's edited, and you don't know what's going on in between a cut. So it's such a, it's just not real, know, and so that's why I was curious, and reminded me, speaking of divorce and stuff, I was with, I don't want to get too close, but whatever. I was with one of my brothers, and his wife, and the three of us had all been divorced. They are happily remarried, with kids, and we were hanging out one night talking about our divorces, and thankfully, I would say my sister-in-law had the least tumultuous. My brother and I had very, in our own way, crazy divorce stories. But what was interesting, so then, here I was, the single guy, kind of going through my own breakup and trying to understand myself. And I was like, well, how did you guys go from being in a divorced relationship, dating around, and then, realizing like you guys were great? And, I've talked to my brother about it multiple times, but they both kind of responded by saying like, when they had sex, they're like, oh, this is good. This is enjoyable. Like, I feel comfortable. I feel like this is fun. I want more, whereas like in their previous relationships, it was, oh, we are a Jewish couple. We are married now. And it's like, and I know for my sister-in-law, she had never really felt quite that, attraction and drive to her former spouse. And I know for my brother, the situation that he was in, it was just like, it was never the right thing, but our brother passed away when they started dating, and she had a past family. So it was like things brought them together for the right reasons, but it persisted for maybe not the right reasons. They surprisingly, even though they were together forever, my understanding is they did not have sex before marriage, which God bless them.
Well,
but then it and that's why I was curious, because it was like the same, like to me when they said that to me, and they're both a few years older than me, I was like, what? I was like, and but then it made sense, because like probably a lot of people have had that situation, but I think with porn it's like a whole different thing, where your whole reality around a woman is a certain look, B a certain like, this is the order that sex goes, and then you have tabs go, you know what I mean? It's a crazy thing. And so yeah, I was wondering about that. So okay.
And just if I may, you mentioned like downsides of porn, some of which aren't at all, by no means the biggest downsides. Maybe there's some big ones, but they're not. This is not an all-encompassing list. But in hindsight, and from my experience, the biggest downsides to porn, first and foremost, is the fact that it is always available to you. So if you start thinking about this for a second, if you're someone who, since you were, let's say I started watching at 10, but let's call it since I was 15,
Mm-hmm.
I always had porn in my pocket, meaning access to it,
Yeah.
a phone, whatever it might be. The problem that comes down to in a relationship, if you compare the two for a second, well, when I'm in a relationship, there's another human being.
Takes work.
It takes work, and in a relationship, in the healthiest of relationships, I don't always have access to sex, and I shouldn't, because we're human. We have feelings. Maybe we're fighting one day. Maybe another day she's sick. Maybe another day I'm sick. Maybe whatever the reason might be, it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
I don't have that 24/7 access. So if your entire idea of sex, which has been provided to you in the form of porn, if your entire idea is made up as this is something I have access to, we have more access to porn than we do to food in many instances. How often are you starving and you have your phone in your pocket?
You can get it faster. You can get it faster. That's true.
So if you enter with that mindset into a relationship,
you can get it faster, cheaper, and more of it than you can get food.
100%. So if you just imagine entering into a relationship with that mindset, how quickly you'll show up and be disappointed.
Right.
The other biggest downside that I found to it is that your phone and the porn itself never gets horny and comes to you. So if you think about this for a second, it's a one-way street.
Yeah.
I'm only on it when I'm horny. I'm only on it when I'm bored. I'm only on it when I want. Now you enter into a relationship. Again, there's another human being. They get horny too. They want it too. They get bored too. And all of a sudden, I don't care if you watch porn for 50 years. If you enter into a relationship, this whole concept of, wait a minute, do I have to do it even if I don't feel like it? I never knew that. That's a new concept, and it hits some people in the face. And it's a difficult thing to wrap your head around when your entire life, this relationship with what we call porn or sex, has been very much a one-way street. And it's subtle stuff which people don't talk about.
That's a really good point.
But it's big stuff, and it's for these reasons that I think people forget religion for a second. It's for these reasons that people should really think about, how am I going to approach a relationship? And again, I learned so much of this. I'm being honest with you, Zach, after I got divorced.
Yeah, no, makes sense. And I think what you made me think about is porn is that way, but everything on the phone is that way.
What do you mean?
Like for me, because I would say I'm thankfully not addicted, and but I would say like I go in spurts of when I have Instagram on my phone and when I don't. And I know when I have it, I'm like, oh, this is fun. I see memes and I catch up on what my friends are doing, but then I just scroll. And even worse than that is you might post something hoping that someone else is going to look at it. And you're like waiting, so you keep checking. And so it's like you're living in this like world that A, you don't control, B, you don't even curate your own experience because they're doing it for you based on what they think you want to see. And it's like, if I look at my Explore page, it's like impossibly beautiful women of a certain ethnicity and the one that I like, and then dudes who are like 8 packs, super yoked. Because like sometimes I'll look up a workout, but then it's like, oh, all he wants to do is be super fit, never eat a carb, and do that. And it's like, and then you don't have the person who you wanted to check your post and like it or do something. And it's like, it's so, again, you're going to it for your purposes. The only thing you're going to get that's coming in your way is a text or whatever else. But, you know, it does establish like just that dependence of looking at your phone. And I see it in myself all the time, is like, that's what I do when I'm alone and lonely or whatever. And it's, it ain't good.
You called it. It's horrible stuff. It's horrible stuff. And if by me being open about it, I could get anyone out, and this is also why I'm not only on here, like if I talk with anyone on the street, I think a big part of why I'm so open about it is because I personally believe, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, true or not true, this is my personal belief. It's only through everyone being open about it, or as open as they can, that gets other people to realize, A, I'm not the only crazy person in the world. B, that for me being open about stuff kind of lowers the tone of how insane this is. And it really gets people to think, okay, well, shit, it's no different than any other thing I'd get hooked on when I'm 10. It'd be hard to sort of shake off. And in this specific instance, it happens to be porn, but it could be anything. If you start giving a kid cigarettes at 10, like whatever it might be. And so I think by talking about it, it kind of lowers that whole hot energy that like our parents might have about it.
Well, I think,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think physiologically, when you're obsessing or thinking about something versus when you just acknowledge even that you're feeling a certain way, that has a physiological impact where you're like, okay, I've acknowledged it. I might still feel that way, but I'm not going crazy because I feel that way. I'm like, all right, this is an urge, or this is a loathing, or whatever it is. So, all right, last question on this. Are you still
so here's what I also learned to say, because when you say still, which is interesting, I don't know if you caught it, in the word still there's the implication
that
it's temporary.
Not gonna
Right. So what I learned to say about this is I am always in a state or in a place in life where I'm no longer a porn consumer, which I'm very much am today right now.
Nice. Congrats.
Thank you. But by assigning any other thing to it, all that causes me to feel it. Because here's the thing: when I say I'm in a state of not consuming porn, whatever that might be. On the other hand, I'm also very much acknowledging that I'm a human being. Yeah. And that I don't know what will happen in a year. I don't know what will happen tomorrow. I don't know what will happen tonight.
Right.
But every single minute of every single minutes in my day, I am very much conscious of it, and I am thankful that these days I'm able to live my life way more effectively without it. And obviously, as you know, or can imagine, the longer you go without something, the easier it is to not be with it. And that's true with everything.
Yes.
But does any of this imply that I'll never watch porn again in my life? I learned to not say that because I'm not that cocky. And I really, I don't know. I don't know. I hope I won't ever. I hate it. I despise it. I forget me for a second. I have friends and I see how it affects other people's lives too. And if people could learn from me like I learned from others and from myself, hey, it's just a bad thing all around, and for so many reasons. So these days as we speak, I'm not a porn consumer, and I'm thankful to say that, and I say that with the highest hopes of continuing that for the rest of my life. So that's kind of where I fall. Yeah.
Amen.
Porno, man.
Porno.
Oh, look at that. Porno.
You can make that shirt for your next podcast.
Porno. Yeah, no, but before we get off this topic, it's I always found it interesting where, I don't know about you, but most people I talk to, it's like 9/11. It's like, you know how most people know where they were when the Twin Towers were hit? It's almost like most people remember, like it happened yesterday, the first encounter with porn that they had.
I can definitely remember the first significant encounter.
Yeah, significant. So what do you mean by significant?
It's hard to know if it was the first. I had two friends. Both of them had dads who had old magazines. One of those friends, those magazines were more accessible. The other, they were slightly less. I don't remember which one we discovered first, but I do remember one of them being a more significant moment in our revelation.
Whoa.
Because we also sort of got in trouble at the same time. It was like one of those like, yeah. I mean, to be fair, kind of his fault. The friend's dad, because there were 2 bathrooms in their house, and the guest bathroom, if you just looked underneath one of the sinks, there was a porn magazine. So it's like if they ran out of toilet paper in the bathroom and you're like, oh, I need more toilet paper,
You'd find a porn magazine.
you might find a porn magazine. And then if you looked at the actual like linen closet, there was a stack of them.
Whoa. And this was the dad.
Yeah. And this was like
Oh.
back in the 90s. Different time.
Right.
Slightly different time. I will say that.
Yeah.
And he's in a healthy marriage. You know what I mean? It wasn't, and I don't think it was a secret to the wife either.
It makes a huge difference.
Yeah. So I do want to say all those things because I like the family. I'm obviously not going to give any hints as to that. But so those things are kind of important to notice. That being said, it was Shabbat. Not a lot to do. And some of us would be playing like a board game while the others would go like to the bathroom, go take a look. And we were so young.
How old were? Do you remember how old you were?
I'd say around 10.
Okay. Yeah.
I would definitely not like bar mitzvah, definitely not like 13, 14. Like we weren't old enough to know why it was so cool or what we were supposed to do with this stimulation.
Right.
But it was, and this is, I think, kind of going back to like that discovery of you finding it at 10 and it being on the computer and like in your face is like, I can remember it being an all-consuming moment to the point where like, we keep going back and forth. And then at some point, the dad goes in and someone must have kept the cupboard open. And he calls his son's name out and he goes to the back. The irony of it all being is like that was the perfect crime because what's he really going to do? He's going to get mad at his son for looking at his perfectly accessible porno magazines. Like, and then what's he gonna do? Tell our parents that we looked at his porn magazines, and it's not like they were hidden in the basement. You know what I mean? It's not like we had to go digging. It was like they were there for us. That being said, to the impact that it can have, it's like I would say I probably don't remember most of it, but I feel like there's 1 or 2 images that I still have in my brain from 20 plus years ago.
Isn't that crazy?
So that I think does speak. Now, I have a weird memory like that. Like, I'll remember a conversation, even if I don't remember someone's name or anything. Like, I can remember very unique details. But with images and stuff, they really stick in your head. So it's like, so in that sense, going back to what you're talking about, how it can, like, really impact, for sure. Yeah. Even a magazine in the 90s before it had become this massive industry and yeah, like a whole different world. Yeah.
So I'm assuming you clearly remember this friend who introduced you or who sort of was the matchmaker between you and porno, right?
Yes.
So question, have you over the years felt resentment towards or I don't know if anger is the word, but almost like a darn you attitude towards this friend of yours?
No, only because I don't feel that porn has ever been something that's impacted my life. I think if I've ever like got to a point where I was consuming more than on a very like seldom basis, it wouldn't be attributable to him. I'm also not someone to blame anyone else but myself for what I do.
But did you have control over him showing you the magazines? You can't blame yourself for it.
Yeah, I mean, do I have control? I mean, what I remember was, okay, what I think I remember happening was one of the other friends was like, so-and-so's dad has a porno magazine in that bathroom. I was like, okay. So it wasn't like someone yanked it and
Right.
put my head into like a picture of a naked woman. It was more like, it was interesting. Okay, you know what? After talking about all this, I'm gonna get my parents in trouble now. I have not told many people this story, but I was really young.
Millions of people are going to hear
Yeah, I know.
this.
Well, you have 1,000 subscribers. I saw.
Millions of
I don't know
people.
how you have 1,000 subscribers, but you have them. That's impressive.
People find you interesting.
I haven't been on the podcast yet. There better be 10,000 now.
They knew you were coming.
Yeah,
So.
the anticipation is always great.
Yeah.
So my parents are getting red in the face on this story. So when I was like in kindergarten, so really young, my parents owned, it was like in America, you had these old school cable boxes, not like the digital cable. They were like these little boxes and they had like a red LED, like 2, 4, so, it's like whatever. Those were the channels. There was like some modified version that you could buy that would give you like HBO and Showtime, where you didn't have to pay. And they got it somehow. I don't know how. I was super, super, super young. And at some point, as I'm flipping through the channels, I realized that channel 0 and channel 1 are porno channels.
Whoa. Okay.
And I don't know if it was always like that all the time, but the crazy thing was what I remember, and I was young, I was 6 probably.
Whoa.
And it probably explains a lot about my psyche now, but I remember flipping through it and like, this is also like, old school TV porn. It's a little different than what is on the internet nowadays.
Right.
It's a little more like dancey and cinematography, like it's not.
It's more like a movie.
Yeah, not a good one. And I remember turning to it and there was like, naked women kind of dancing and dressed up in a weird way. And the reason why I remember this is because obviously I'm not home alone at 6 years old. So I'm watching this, not really understanding what I'm watching. And then my uncle, I'm sure he doesn't remember it, came in and he goes, "What are you watching?" And he just flips the channel. And then I remember many years later, it's probably after I had the magazine incident, being like sick at home and utilizing it. Years later, I think like I talked to my brothers, and I don't think I was like the only one, but I was very young when I remember that image pretty strongly because that was the first like video, I guess.
Right.
So I guess I was actually super young, and there's no one really to blame other than me going like that.
Yeah, it happens.
And I don't know if blame, like, I happen to be a very like open within a relationship, very open and very sexual and like I find it very healthy and good, which is why I think I've actually been able to not get addicted to porn.
What is addiction? What is addicted to porn? Like, it's hard to define.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I would say if you're Well, how did you define it for yourself?
To me, addiction. Here's why I call it a porn addiction for me.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'll have to talk with way more people about this to sort of get a feel for an average of where people fall with this. But by no means do I consider myself to be someone who porn has ever controlled my life ever. Oh no, I'm not. All this talk is not to say that I never spent more than 10 minutes on porn at a time,
right?
Ever. So I'm not, it hasn't run my life by no means in that way. Like I said, it's mostly to do with the inner shame that I personally carry around, and I'm probably the only one aware of it. I do think it radiates, but I'm the only one who's aware of it. But the reason I call it an addiction, this is how I personally define addiction. An addiction is where I would not want to do it, and yet I find myself doing it. And so there's something there that's a disconnect between my true inner desire and the actions and results that happen in real life.
Okay.
And typically with things that we don't call addictions, our desire and the action match. Meaning, I don't want to eat at that restaurant. I don't eat at that restaurant because I'm not addicted to that restaurant. But other things in life where I want it or I don't want it, and then my actions are the opposite of that, that's where I start calling things more of an addiction, because I wouldn't say it's beyond my control. Everything's within my control, but I would say that there's something there that requires more than just I don't want to do it or I do want to do it in order to actually not do it. So that's why I call it that.
Okay. Yeah. So I would still consider myself to have not. I wouldn't say I've ever been in a place with that where it was more than an isolated incident like that, where I was like, yeah,
and maybe unlike me, you never wanted to not do it.
Well, yeah, but also I think I just was lucky enough to kind of, or whatever, or mindful enough to know that like it's a slippery slope, and if I am going to engage, then I need to say I'm engaging and I'm leaving it. But that being said, as I get older, and even like in my last relationship, I wasn't, you know what I mean? So it's like, I don't, it isn't, I try to not make it the default for like, okay, I'm bored alone, you know what I mean? But yeah, there's probably been a few times where I was like, yeah, I probably didn't need to put my mind there today, or in that moment. But yeah, I don't. Yeah, so maybe in that sense, isolated incidents. But to me, I think calling an addiction would also, for me, but again, definitions are different. Like, I think it would have had to impact my life in such a way where I was like, oh, there are other things where I could say that, but not with that. Thankfully,
Interesting. Yeah. Huh.
But it's, I get it, and especially if you're someone who struggles to find companionship. Like I heard, Russell Brand. Do you listen to him at all?
Yeah.
Like he talks about it because he talks a lot about addiction, and so he's had a porn addiction as well. And he was just like, he was saying it's a lot of they're just lonely, like they're, it's the closest way for them. Or the most accessible way for them to get some form of intimacy, even if it's bullshit to some extent, and maybe even lascivious for the people in it, that you're actually watching, particularly the women. But he's like, that's why I think so many people are falling into it, is like people are craving intimacy. And even if you're watching two other people having sex, not necessarily intimate, but it's like it's an accessible point for you to access. So it was interesting.
Yeah, all that is true, but what the byproduct of that is, like what we talked about before, is at the end of the day, you do show up to a real relationship with real people who have opinions and feelings, and all of a sudden it's no longer, like we said, it's not the same type of thing, and that's where people get disconnected.
I think that fear for me kept me somewhat level-headed. Was like, one day I'm going to have to not, and so it's like I never wanted to get to a point where that would be the hardest thing for me to stop. It's like I know people, Lahavdil, going back to Adam.
What's Lahavdil?
Lahavdil,
if there's a Chris something watching this,
Lahavdil, tangent, like on another similar but side point. Literally, it means to change it up, but just a little switch up. Like in the, I know people like when it's a fast day in the Jewish calendar, people who drink coffee every day, they have to start weaning themselves off coffee because they're going to get a headache.
Oh, wow.
So I don't drink caffeine. I don't, you know what I mean? So it's like, I don't have any of those things other than maybe an addiction to eating. Maybe. I don't think so because I'm actually pretty good at fasting, but like again, the chocolate chip cookie thing, or like certain things, like I am very highly inclined to go pursue those, even when it takes me time or it can hurt me or whatever. But with that, it was like, I don't want to be at a point where it's like, oh, now I'm in a relationship where I'm going to, touch a real human woman.
Right.
I don't want all of those other things to be floating and be like a constant nag, which I think also, like, there can be a flip side to that, is like then you sort of, even entering relationship, you might have an inflated view of what the sex life might be, which you were talking about before. So yeah, it definitely is not, I would say, an overall benefit to society.
Yeah.
But I think, in really small moderation and maybe in the right context, like I don't think it's the worst, categorically, but it's a dangerous like, book to just start opening
Very
up,
dangerous. Consider this. Here's another scary one for you and for anyone listening. Most kids these days live in the real world, you'd say, in terms of time, or in their room on video games or on the computer.
If you're talking in the last 10 years, I would say way more in
front of a screen.
Yeah.
Fair?
Yep.
Whatever that screen is.
Yep.
Great. So consider this for a second. It's kind of a scary thought, but you'll see where I'm going with this. You have a kid, 13 years old, okay? And we just agreed, they probably spend 90% of their time in life in front of a screen, school aside, where they're staring at their teacher and the whiteboard. And even then, they're probably peeking at their phone.
I would probably say 75. I think 90 is
Let's
a
go
little,
75.
Yeah,
75%.
But 75 is still 3/4.
75%.
Which is still a lot.
Great. So consider this. 75% of the time, they're watching a screen. On that screen, probably they're mostly playing video games or watching a movie stuff, right? Meaning they're not looking at a couple engaging with each other. What's the only time these kids are looking at a couple engaging with each other, for the most part?
Probably their parents. If they're together and if they hang out with their parents.
Which is another huge problem.
Yeah.
Because what percentage of parents actually spend time
Well, if you don't do family
engaging?
dinners during the week, or you don't do Shabbat meals on the weekend or whatever, and most parents are not together.
Yeah, most parents are not together.
I can tell you, and you may know this, it's like, I know when I'm dating, if I am talking to someone whose parents are together, I don't know your family situation, but for me, it's like, it could go from me being like, I don't know about this person, to being like, I think I should really give this person a chance, because the way they talk about their parents and their parents' relationship is very positive.
Amazing.
And it's not to say that I haven't dated or even seriously been involved with people who don't have that, because I don't think that you're necessarily cursed if your parents weren't great or whatever. But it is a positive for me when I'm like, and it's so rare. But
we should put a distinction between parents being together to parents having a good marriage.
Right.
There's a difference.
Yeah. So I'm saying, and I would say that I would hope that if anyone who's my age that I'm dating and their parents are still together, I'm hoping that it's good enough. No, specifically, I've been talking to someone recently, and like, she talks about her parents quite a lot in a very positive way. And it's nice. You know what I mean? It's like, it's really nice listening, and it's very rare, I've found.
It is.
Even if their parents have a good relationship, people, whatever, they're so, and my brothers and I, we do this about our parents. It's like, you grow up, you learn all these things, you realize all the imperfections that, you were sort of taught or even forced to do. And thank God I had great parents. So it's not like I'm living with tons of like this stuff, but it's like, you start to realize, okay, well, I was told this, but really maybe this makes more sense. And then I think some people take that as like, well, my parents just told me all the wrong shit and da-da-da. And it's like, dude, you're here. You're alive at 30-something, you know what I mean? Or 40-something, or 20, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's like, that didn't happen because sometimes it's because you had terrible parents and you went out. But most of the time it was like, as flawed as they were, they did what they needed to do to get you to where you are.
100%.
And yeah, so
100%. Good marriages are good. So what I'm saying is, with the kids, if you think about the majority of them looking at a couple engaging, period. It's not happening on the streets because they're not on the street. They're 75% in front of the screen. The majority of when they see a couple engaging is porn.
Porn or movies. Either way, it's fake.
Porn or movies. But
or
even
manufactured, I should say.
Sure, but even in movies, how much make-out scenes, and it's all about the physical and the whole thing. So at the end of the day, could we agree that 70% of all the quantity of watching couples engaging has to do with either porn or making out or whatever that might be, right?
It's sex. It's sex
related.
Yeah.
So the kid shows up to a real relationship with a
Yeah.
real person, and in their head, guess what they're thinking? Okay, this whole thing is about sex related. And then they start, and forget having kids. You have, oh my God, she has hormones, and she gets into moods.
Right.
And
Some days are good. Some days are really shitty. Some moments are good.
Right.
And
she has opinions, and she talks back, and she's a whole person.
Yeah.
And I mean, this whole world. And if you show up from this place of this is what I think couples do, to reality hitting you in the face, I'm shocked. You know what? This will sound crazy. I'm shocked as many couples are still together as there are.
Yeah.
Kind of sad to say, but my hat's off to them. My hat's off to them.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'll say for me, like when I see a couple, especially like our age, and I can see that they're like a good couple, I'm like, damn. I'm like, it's so cool. You know, it's like, because I see a lot of couples that I'm like, okay, I get it. You know, I was like, I see it. One of them doesn't maybe seem so happy, but like they're maybe happier than being single. But when you see the good ones, and going back to my brother, you know, remarried, like they're really pleasant to be around because you can feel that they love each other, they respect each other, they give each other the space and all that. But that makes it easy for other people to also exist in that sphere. Some people, it's like they're trying so hard to show their love, or they're trying so, you know, and so yeah, it's amazing when it happens, and you're right, it seems to go against our nature, and so when it actually works, it's pretty
makes a big difference.
Fantastic, yeah,
big difference, incredible.
So you had me on to talk about porn addiction. Okay, that's not the kind of films I make. Well,
so let's talk about what you do. You mentioned content creators. That sounds like an all-encompassing.
It is.
So what do you do?
Okay, the three primary roles that I fill is writing, directing, and producing.
Anything and everything, or specific stuff?
So so these, we're gonna go top down. So I moved to LA by way of Alaska, Seattle, Israel, and Australia, different times for different parts of my life. Because I always, sort of like you always want to be a pilot, I always wanted to make movies. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't grow up in LA. I didn't understand the industry or anything like that. But I knew literally from ever since I can remember, like that was what I wanted to do. I always told stories. I loved stories, which is why I liked the Shabbat table. When I was a kid, I watched Harry and the Hendersons. I don't know if that's a little before your time.
I probably wouldn't have watched it even if it were after my time.
Well, you were in Israel and Haredi, right?
Yeah, so that's probably has to do with it. Yeah.
So Haredi, super religious. Anyway,
Haredi,
you know what it is. And one time I'm going to come back and do an entire episode in an Israeli accent. I'm not going to speak in Hebrew. I'm just going to speak in an Israeli accent.
Hey, excuse me, can I ask you a question? You want to buy a Dead Sea product?
Yes,
Dead Sea product?
I have done so many armies. Okay, so anyway, I always wanted to make movies. I moved here after I did a master's in screenwriting. I was writing a lot all the time. I was doing other odd jobs, selling solar, teaching at a Chabad boys' school, Jewish ultra-Orthodox school, yada, yada, yada. Then a friend of mine who had the same dreams, he's also in music though, his name is Ellie, we had written a script together. Kind of sucked, honestly. It wasn't that good, but we worked through it. And then we wrote another one, which we're actually going to be working on this week. But then the summer of 2018, I wrote a script with him called Knife Corp, which he had a script before, but I was like, this is garbage. Let's rewrite it, where everything is set in one house. Kids are selling knives door to door. They get stuck in a house. It gets really creepy and crazy and funny because we like comedy. And let's just make that movie. If no one gives us money, I will max out a credit card and, whatever, and we'll go rent a house and we'll just do it. So we wrote that script in June, July that summer. We made it January 2019. COVID hit. by the time the movie was over.
Man.
So all the festivals that we had submitted to were shut down. Then we waited. Long story short, we ended up getting it distributed. It's on Amazon, Tubi, all of these platforms. And we got it made. And we ended up getting an investor last minute, which was pretty cool from a friend of mine, Jeff. He brought in an investor. And we made the friggin' movie.
Whoa.
Yeah, which is crazy. And then Ellie has since made a movie, which will come out. Well, I don't know when it'll come out, but he's almost done with the post-production. So stay tuned for that. I'll give him a shout out. But since then, I have the content creation part, because even in this time, like I would do odd, small gigs for whatever marketing purposes were needed. I have since kind of carved out a little niche for myself in the tech corporate space making content. So I work with a company in Manhattan Beach that it's an international company. We work with huge corporations and we identify their strengths to then build an entirely new business. So not a consulting thing. It's like totally new. And then within that, there's avenues for content, whether it's to like explain a new product to a CEO or a C-suite executive, to explaining it to a potential merchant who's going to opt in, to customers, to ads that hopefully, in fact, today I had a meeting about, which I'm actually pretty excited about. About 2 or 3 of the companies, one of them I named, which I also love to do. We're going to start rolling out some new brands and I'll get to put out some really branded content. So
wow.
For me, what I like I've come up with jingles for these companies. I come up with taglines. So creative word storytelling is ultimately what I do. And then I'm grateful, like you're saying, you get to learn a lot in the job and in the hobby. Like I'm sitting around people who have had such diverse business experiences, and we're working with top level businesses coming up with the most cutting edge solutions that, or that people are talking about in the tech world and the business world that are usually foreign to me at the beginning of the day. And by the end of the day, I have to figure out a way to explain this to others. So it's a really great process for me. And then, within the Web3 space, I'm starting to do something with a group in Australia that I'm excited about. So to me, it's like telling stories, but my physical roles are writing, directing, and producing. And then I'm also, because you're in Alaska Airlines, you're not a pilot for Alaska, are you?
No, flight attendant.
Okay, and you still fly with them?
I'm still an employee. I barely touch it, but
I mean the benefits are probably worth
good
keeping.
stuff. Yeah.
So, I wrote the same summer. I wrote a script with Ellie about Knife Corp. I wrote a pilot. It's a very large, epic Jewish history story that's real, that took place over the last 200 something years, but it was happening very actively in Alaska, and I went up there. And so now that's I'm still working on personal creative projects, and that's the biggest one I'm working on. Pretty excited about it. And then a little comedy about a rec league team playing volleyball on the beach.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So you like doing names. What do you think of the Yoel Gilman show? Be honest.
I like Yoel Talks Jobs more.
You like Yoel Talk, but it's not just about jobs. I told you, I started talking to people about their jobs.
Yeah.
And now I'm like,
I know, but the thing is so okay, you want my honest? I
want you to lie to us, millions of people.
Here's my professional opinion. So we do naming workshops in our company. You can bring me in for that. No, but really, I would say the only issue with it is your name only has brand equity with the people that know you.
Right.
So the Yoel show maybe is even better because it's snappier.
The Yoel show.
Meaning and it kind of sounds like YOLO, you know what I mean? But Yoel Gilman, it's you're trying to advertise as if you're, Steve Jobs. And it's
it's true.
The Joe Rogan Experience is famous because he was famous before.
Right.
But it still took him 5-something years till anyone cared.
Right.
So otherwise, that's why I like the Talk Jobs, because it gives me an idea of what it is. And if I don't know who you are.
Right.
Or you could say you could do some sort of a play on the fact that you're a pilot, pilot co-pilot conversation. You know what I mean? Because to me, I told maybe 2 or 3 people that I was gonna come here, and I was was like, yeah, a friend of mine, he does a podcast and he's a pilot. And they're like, oh, he's a pilot, And it's like, as an Alaskan, I'm like, that's not so crazy. But to the average person,
it is, yeah.
And a Jewish pilot, no less.
Right.
And so there is something interesting there where it's like, the pilot, I don't know, the flight logs, you know what I mean? Like something where it's like that, where it's like, it gives me this idea, even if it's not what it is directly, it brings me in.
But then I also don't want this to sound like it has anything to do with, because I talked with a neurologist, you know what I mean? Like it's not specifically, but I like that. So the Yol show.
Take flight.
But flight has something to do with.
But that just means you're going on a journey. You know what I mean?
Take flight.
I don't know. We can keep spitballing.
Yeah, no, but I like it. The Yol show is snappier.
Yeah.
The Yol show.
Welcome to the Yol show. There we go.
Yeah.
You gotta get a little intro music. I can get my
The Yol show.
Yeah.
No, that's so interesting. Naming stuff. So what is it about when you were a kid? So you said you always wanted to create stuff. You always wanted to do. So here's what I mean. How do I know I want to be a pilot? Well, because my parents flew a lot. So I was on airplanes. So I got to be in airplanes.
I want to be that guy.
Exactly. What did you have to point at to say I want to be that?
There's a few things, but I can just one thing, a story that I don't obviously remember, but I will say that when I was born, like literally at the moment that I was born, I was not crying. Apparently my eyes were wide open, and I was like looking at the doctor, looking at the nurse, looking at my mom, looking at my grandmother. And the way they tell the story was like I was really observing the whole scene versus like the average baby who's like, crying. And so that, but then like what I remember as a kid is like sitting at a Friday night meal with adults often speaking about things I didn't understand, kids doing the thing. And I just remember observing a lot. And I always liked impersonating like my teachers. I always, I'm good at like, sometimes I'm better at listening to how people speak than what they say.
Interesting.
And so like,
I got to ask you after this, how do I speak? I don't think everyone has ever told me that.
You want me to tell you now? No, I mean, when I listened to the clips of the show, I was like, oh no, he's a good, you got the right voice. I mean, you have your personality is, I think, very present in the way that you speak. You know what I mean? I'm told by some, it also depends on my mood, but like I can be very monotone, and dry, but then I'll like kind of hit them with a little like wit, a little sarcasm, and they're like, were you
Right.
So I think everyone has their own way, but
it's funny you say my person. A student of mine used to always tell me that I do an incredible job in playing or imitating the perfect Yoel Gilman character. Meaning, he said I'm almost a character of myself. I don't know. Maybe he meant something. I don't know. But
I understand what they mean, but I think what he's saying is like you're not a generic dude. You know what I mean? Like if someone meets you, you're gonna have more, I think, of like a presence and an impact on that versus like sometimes you meet a guy named Joe, and that's the only, like, you don't even remember. You're like, hey, I'm Joe. I'm an accountant, and like they don't even care to express themselves any more than that. You have, maybe because it is that you are doing the things that you like doing all the time. You have an energy where you're like, hey, I'm happy to share what it is that's going on here because I'm happy,
Right.
But going back to the movie stuff, like I don't know if it was anything specific, but like there's a few like moments where it was like very obvious, like in kindergarten.
But wait, how did coming out of your mom's
I was just thinking like a director. I was looking at the whole scene. You know what I mean? I was really observing. Like this is the way my grandmother describes me even today. She's like, you were so attentive to everybody around, and you got them to smile at you. And had I wanted to act, I might have done that. I did that as a kid, like in theater, but I never. It was never for me the thing that I wanted to do. But like in kindergarten, I was obsessed with Aladdin. So talking about like moments in my life, like seeing Aladdin in the theater was definitely a moment that I still remember. But then in kindergarten, I was like, oh, we're going to make a production of Aladdin. And I remember talking to the girl that I had cast as Jasmine and the boy that I had cast as Aladdin and telling them, like, just so you know, you guys are going to have to kiss, like, at the end of this. And this was like a totally made up 6-year-old, thing.
Right.
But I was very determined for it. And so, yeah, like, just leadership and teaching. And then I think my house particularly, and you've been to Beth's, which is as similar to my house as any I've ever
been to your
grown up.
house too.
Yeah,
I've been to your parents' house,
but not like when I was a kid. Meaning
Of course
not like in the heyday. Whereas like we had people from all over the world,
Got it.
anywhere religiously, Jewish, not Jewish, anything, for Shabbat, sharing stories, and I was exposed to thousands of people
Got it.
from all walks of life who also like appreciated my family. So it was always kind of positive, so I was always experiencing these things very positively. And I mean, I don't know how much you know my grandfather, but like that guy could be the subject of multiple books, multiple movies, and multiple TV shows.
Whoa.
He is a world-class poker player, furrier, who's been arrested by the FBI for
Wait a minute, you talking
Beth's,
about your
Beth's dad.
Okay, yeah, so your mom's parents.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I met them.
Yeah. Pass over.
When I said no, I didn't think that I met. I don't know them, but
Yeah.
I did meet them, and he is a big character.
Yeah, he's a character
Yes.
and a half, So it's like for me, I was just always around it. And then like, kind of going back to the cannabis thing, it was like I remember I was studying at Hebrew U one semester during college, and kind of looking for someone to smoke some hash with, and
What's up with hash? There's no hash. There's just like cannabis.
So easily you can get it here. Come on,
Really?
We're in California.
Lots of hash in Israel.
Yeah.
Hashish.
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 Yeah. So I was in a mysticism class, of course, and these guys were like clearly not just stoners, but into other things. And I was like, all right, hey, you guys want to like get together after class? And I remember sitting with them at the dorm room, and I'd never been high and bored in my life. Because my friends in Seattle that I grew up with, or even like friends from out of town, but like who were my friends, like we were really quirky. Like if we smoked weed, we weren't doing like you could be someone who didn't smoke, but if you were hanging out with us, you were going to be cracking up because we'd be coming up with songs, jokes, one line, like doing silly, stupid stuff, but like we were legitimately quirky and funny. So for me, I was just surrounded by people that I always thought were like funny, and like I always thought like my older brother, not my oldest brother, but my older brother, he's so funny, or my brother Ari, who passed away, like he's so funny and cool. So it was like I always had these characters around me, and to me it was like I wasn't going to be better at sports than Josh or Ari for sure, but I was really good at this, like communication, talking, telling stories. I was a good actor as a kid. Maybe one day I'll do it if I'm not making a career out of it, but just like if there's the right project for me to do. But yeah, and then as I've gotten older, I've realized that story is the thing that I am able to connect myself and others in the best way. And then film specifically is the most collaborative. So like I happen to love, like I can't attribute this to being a kid necessarily, but I love, if there's 30 people around me, some of them are actors, some of them are set designers, costume designers, whatever, getting the best work and the complete passion out of every single person around you is like, it's amazing, to the point where I feel as a director that I'm almost doing nothing except they come and ask me a question. Well, how do you want it this way? I was like, well, what do you think? Because you are the expert in your domain. So if what you say sounds wrong, well, then we'll talk about it. But if what you say is more brilliant than what I would have come up on my own, then great. Why would I get in the way of that? Now go do what you want to do because you're going to bring the best to that. And
would you say that's what makes a good director?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say I know of others who like they're very good at everything from the lighting, the sound, all of the technical things that they might get more nuanced and instructional on that. I would still say that you should always listen. You should always listen. Whether or not you take it is a different thing. But I think so. I will say this. Again, all that drama leading up to the production, it was a love fest on set. Everyone was so happy. And, even the people who were really complaining and fighting about the wages going into it were like, I am shocked at how smooth and how happy and to me it was, I had worked on a really crappy movie before and I was not really getting paid, but I was doing it because I had just moved to LA and I was like, this is my time to see the whole thing. And so I just, that was my mindset and I learned and I was like, okay, like everything else I've ever seen in my life that doesn't work, the leadership is terrible. They had hired a director who had only done music videos and super nice guy. Like I got nothing against him as a human at all. The script wasn't good. It wasn't like he was given a great project to do. And so it was like the combination of him kind of being a little bit unsure and the fact that the producers didn't really respect him or really respect the work because it was a zombie STD sequel.
Zombie STD sequel.
Yeah. I know. You gotta like repeat that and think about it
and let it sink in.
Yeah. And so like when you're doing that, and then here I am. I'm not really getting paid. I had a buddy who I went to a master's program with, who's a very good writer. He's not getting paid. And they're treating me nicely because they kind of know me, but they're treating him like shit. They're treating other, production assistants like shit. And then they would like ask me at the end of the week, they're like, why is everyone in such a bad mood? I was like, are you an idiot? It's like especially the people who aren't getting paid well, but it doesn't really matter. It's like, all you got to do, hey, how you doing? Oh, good. I'm so excited to work with you today. And maybe it's fake on a day where you're not so excited. Maybe, but honestly, once you see someone and they're there to make the project that you want to make, presumably they kind of want to make it too. You should, all you got to do is acknowledge that person, and then throughout the day, it helps if you could do it one or two more times because it's a long day on set. But to me, I was very conscious of it. I even opened up the whole production by saying it's like a minyan, a group of 10 men. It's like, if you don't have 10, you don't have anything. And it's like, if you don't have the production.
Wait, so we got to explain for the listeners. So a minyan is a group of 10 men that are needed in order to
pray, to say certain prayers to basically make it official.
So why do you have nothing if you only have 9?
So that's a good question.
Not from Jewish perspective, just for people listening.
Well, it requires, for whatever mystical or legal reasons, it requires 10, and once 10, you unlock that door, which allows you to say certain things that you cannot say on your own.
Without them.
Yeah.
So a good analogy to that would be an airplane that is certified for 2-pilot operation, meaning if you only have 1 pilot, you have nothing.
Right.
Similar idea.
Yeah, so with the way I see it in production is like, if they're not there, what are we doing?
Right.
If I'm just the only one with a camera and there's 2 people, well then it's the 3 of us that matter. But the fact that we had a makeup artist, the fact that we had someone who was just managing the sound in the back of the house so that people were quiet, there isn't one thing that's actually more important than the other. And so that was like how I kind of started, probably each week really, but definitely in the beginning. And then there's other things like I show up, if I'm directing, I'll usually show up with like a blazer on because I want people to understand that I value them. And I think sometimes just dressing
100%
a little bit better. I don't necessarily wear a tie. It's just like, I just want them to know like I'm taking this seriously because I know you are working hard. Sometimes, most of the time, I think the other people are working harder than you, and so in some ways. And so for me, I think, leadership is like, it's just so important. And
100%.
And it's always something I've been very closely attuned to as a kid. I did a lot of youth group stuff. I saw like, when teachers would say something and kind of like renege on it, or when my parents are great, but it's just you. And maybe that's also why I am allergic to bad leadership.
Ooh,
where
allergic's a big word.
yeah, where it's like, oh, it really bugs me. Bullies and bad leaders are so, as you can imagine, I'm super thrilled with the state of our country. Not to go there, but
we could go there, but it's so interesting when people use the word allergic, how we're all allergic to different stuff because different experiences.
Oh, I react. I either I have to speak up, or I have to shut up and get out.
Because you'll say the wrong thing.
I won't be able to be a positive contributor once I know that person is not respectful of others, not willing to listen. I'm like, either I have to set him straight, or I have to just be out completely.
But I get the bully thing, but how could you hold... Sometimes bad leadership, I feel, happens so... in such a subtle, not even a known way. Meaning if they were aware of it, they wouldn't be bad.
I'll tell you a story that just happened in my work. So I'm in a very, I created my own position at my job, and I am sort of one of one, but I'm also kind of part of a larger team. And that creates problems because for my own projects, I'm sort of the leader, but I sort of have to get approval on each thing. But I'm also not their primary concern because they have other things in their, and also what I do is not their specialty.
Got it.
I'm the only one who specializes in it. Anyway, I have a very close friend who is the reason I'm working there, and he and I were talking about some of these issues, and he said, I always, and this guy's sharp as a tack. You actually should talk to him. He's got a good Australian accent too.
What does he do? What you do?
Well, he does the real business part of what I do. He's just a brilliant entrepreneur.
If he'll come on, I want to talk.
Yeah, and he lives in Manhattan Beach. So
yeah. What's his name? What's his first name?
Brent,
get on here.
BK, we need you.
BK.
Yeah, he's a good Aussie. He's a good Aussie. Anyway, so we were chatting, and he was saying how he'll always sit down with someone and say, "Do you want to be a manager or a leader?"
Okay.
A manager is and this is going back to what makes a good director, is if I was to say, "Hey, I wanted that, lens on, and I wanted this light filter on, and I want it," that's not really leading. That's managing someone else who should be an expert at what they do and not giving them any faith, any trust, or any self-fulfillment at all in what they're doing. Versus leadership, going back to what I was saying, is I'm coming at this with the respect that you know what you're doing. You're still going to ask me for my input because technically it's, the vision, whatever. But I'm going to let you lead what you lead, and I'm going to observe and acknowledge and, and promote and all that. So that, it's funny because this was only a couple of weeks ago that I heard that, but it's exactly how I always saw it. So it was kind of cool. It's cool when you hear someone who's in the business world and they say, or someone in another field where they're like, "Oh yeah, that's the thing that I always think about," but it works. So
interesting. So leadership and management, but could you really fault someone for either not knowing how to distinguish between the two, or
yes,
you could fault someone for not caring, but how do you fault someone for being a less aware human than you are on this planet?
Well, okay, faulting someone, of course. I don't think you really get any benefit in any aspect of your life by trying to fault somebody else for something that they did, unless it's simply so that you don't need to feel guilt. Meaning, but the task of assigning blame or understanding the cause of a mistake that someone else made onto you is kind of hopeless because you really can't ever know the truth. You can
right.
guess, and I think it drives you a little crazy. It's if someone does something mean to you, what I've started to learn in my life is that's their problem. You know what I mean? And I know it sounds obvious, and most people who are healthy adults are like, yeah, of course. But it does take time for you to really realize, especially if you care about that person, it's something that they were doing that was a problem with them, that they were reflecting or projecting onto you because of something that was going on with them. Unless you think, well, maybe I did something to deserve it. In that case, that's a different story. So with management versus leadership or bad leadership, I don't know if you could fault someone, but to me it would be like they don't have the emotional fortitude or the confidence in themselves or the person around them, which is probably in themselves as well, to allow you to do it. So whether or not you can fault them or not, I don't know, but it is to me, it's a loss on all sides by having someone lead who isn't strong enough themselves to allow someone else to be strong and to be great at what they do and to shine, so that maybe you don't get any credit as the leader. You do deep down.
So you're saying it takes more strength for me to let you be strong than for me to show you my strength.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Yeah.
And I would say when I was doing my podcast, I chatted with a friend of mine. You probably met him, Steve Bunin.
No.
Oh, you got to get him. He's a broadcaster, professional. He's in Seattle.
Steve, get on a plane and quickly.
His biggest regret in his career right now is that he didn't fly down to be in Knife Corp. It was to be honest, it was a hassle for him. But
have I met? Is he in Seward Park?
He's in Seward Park. Him and Viviani, Brazilian.
Maybe
they're very close with Beth. Anyway, he's great. I have put him in a couple projects, a couple cameos. But after I had done a few episodes, I was like, hey, can you give me some pointers? And he's also obviously great talker, super witty guy, really talented. And he's like, so here's the thing. When you interview someone...
Are you doing his voice right now?
No. That would be it's a whole different thing. But, he's like, there's a tendency of if you're interviewing someone, and this is more of a conversation, so it is different, but if you're really trying to interview and go from point to point, you should say almost nothing until the pause, and then all you're really saying is, what next? Rather than, and I think you and I both have this, I don't even say a problem, this tendency, which is someone might relate a story, and you and I are very good at relating our story to it. And I would say that it doesn't always mean it's a weakness or an insecurity, but I do think that there is, and I say this about myself, is like there is that tendency to want to say like I know what you're saying versus a silent acknowledgement where it's like, oh, okay.
That's
great.
A good point.
Yeah.
I definitely could see that in me 100%. 100%. It's almost like, is this what you're talking about? Like you'll say something and then I'll say like, oh yeah, the same thing happened to me last week.
Yeah.
Got it. So that all might be true. And I am trying to relay to you not only how much, but why exactly I understand what you're saying, but it's about you.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. I don't think it's a weakness. I think it's something to be mindful of because the reality is sometimes you need to then respond to somebody to keep the conversation going. And also I do want to know how you relate back and then you'll have a conversation with someone who you can't say anything because every first sentence is, oh yeah, well let me tell and it's like that's the person is more like that, and you would never want them to lead you.
Interesting. So how does this connect to leaders? So you're saying a good leader is one who's able to
they can sit and watch and be like, wow, look at how awesome it's like imagine the difference between, I don't know, if you're teaching someone to fly, how much cooler is it that you could say, hey, you reviewed, I don't know how it works, but you reviewed, I sent you instructions yesterday. I'm not going to say anything. Let's see how well you reviewed. And if they do everything right, you're going to be really impressed, even if you gave them all the clues to do it. But if you told them, all right, turn it on, all right, move this switch, There's nothing. Oh, good
Interesting.
job. Oh, good job. You know, it's like, no, it isn't. You literally pointed at the place.
Right. Okay. So you're interesting. So you're saying I could only get that by fully giving someone the room and space for them to shine.
That autonomy to you know, it's like
Interesting.
And I've seen it because I've taught a lot. You know, I remember I had a friend, Dante. He's a filmmaker as well, and he taught in Seward Park in like super diverse school. You know, every kind of kid, every race, every background, every socioeconomic status. And he ran the drama and film program and English program, and he's like a 6'6", 250-pound black dude who's like super strong. You know, he's just like thick. You know,
Right.
and one of the nicest guys I've ever met, and his wife is amazing. But I was teaching at the time that we met in our master's program, and I was like, well, what do you do if the kids show up late? And he goes, the kids don't show up late to my class. And I was like, well, the way you said it, I was like, I believe it. And then I started volunteering with his class on the afternoon class, like to do their plays and stuff. And I noticed like there were so many different kids versus I went to like a Jewish school. So the kids are all within some range of each other.
Right.
Some kids were Jewish. Some kids couldn't even name the race because they're they're a rainbow of people, you know, all together. And when it was time for them to work, they're all over the hallway doing this, but they're working. And I was like, and it was very clear to me, it was like, you let the kids do the things they want to do, and they're going to work way harder than if you tell them, get this math sheet done in 5 minutes for 10 points. It's like, that means nothing.
100%.
You know, and so giving the kids the autonomy, even like my first co-teacher, I was in Australia, and 6th grade is like the 8th grade. 6th grade there is like 8th grade here. So the boys.
Really? Is that?
Well, yeah, because like middle school is basically high school there.
Got it.
So I taught 6th grade. It was a boys' class just because the way there just weren't that many girls in the grade. So it was like 20 boys, prepubescent. I'm the new American guy, and I'm pretty good at holding the room, but these kids had a lot of energy. And I was working with a guy he was the English teacher. He was in his 50s, very calm, which is also very rare for a Jewish school. And what I noticed, which was the opposite of what I would do, is I would walk in and I would see the kids that were talking. I'd be like, hey, don't do that. Hey, don't do that. And he would walk in and he would be quieter and he would go, yo, good job. Good job being quiet. David, I see you're being quiet. Good job. And he would be so quiet to the point where everyone else would start their focus onto him.
Whoa.
And again, that just goes to show you when you're comfortable and you're not chasing what the other people are doing, it's like they're going to come to you.
Wow.
And so as a leader, as anything, I think, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, I don't know.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So he mentioned the positive. He
only focused on the
positive.
And he kept it quiet so that the kid who was messing around was like, wait a second, why do you say good job to him? I'm being
not
quiet.
Paying attention to me.
Yeah, he's like I'm being quiet, and he goes, well, when you're quiet, I'll acknowledge. You know, it's like, or he wouldn't even say that because that would be already acknowledging this kid. Yeah. So it's funny how these little things that you could do even with kids it's the same. It's the same with.
Oh my
gosh.
Yeah.
With adults.
Wow. We stay kids.
Yeah.
we do and we don't really grow up ever.
Especially men.
Yeah, I mean we're stuck.
I know women
we're
are
stuck
mature. No, women just go from I think kind of hating each other as like 12-year-old girls to like hopefully just having some good friends and like still being very serious about getting their life on track. And
women are always mature-ish, like in a weird. You could be a 7-year-old girl and there's this maturity. You know what I mean? It's something that men just don't have, and that's what makes it beautiful. The fact that we're different and the fact that it's crazy. So all the way back to your marriage for a second. So unlike me, or maybe like me, should you have gotten married, or looking back, you shouldn't have? What type of situation was it?
So I will say that the only regret the only true regret that I still carry is not related to my marriage. So in that sense, I wouldn't say that I shouldn't have gotten married. I don't know. I also, again, I don't know if living your life with the I should have or I shouldn't have, like, I don't know how that could help me. I will say that when I do look back, I think I got engaged prematurely. We had spent most of our dating time long distance, and we were very emotionally and intellectually entwined. So we'd write deep emails and letters and have deep discussions on the phone. And that's how we met from the very beginning. So, but that fire, which was there, you don't quite realize how hot it can be until you're really in person. And even though I probably would have moved to Australia anyway, even had we never gotten married, I might still live in Australia, actually, if we hadn't gotten married. But I got engaged before I moved to Australia because I was like, well, I'm going to move there. And why would I get engaged later to someone who I know I want to marry when I can be with my family now? And then, I'll be with her family and like, we'll take our time and all that.
So real quick, I don't want to stop the story, but you're saying that the fire you felt beforehand intensified in person.
Well, yeah, and I'm using the word fire very loosely. I want to be extremely respectful. There were moments in our long distance where I would say there were times, but, any relationship has its ups and downs, of course. But I guess there were like mechanisms in which she would use to then like say, all right, we can't talk for a few days. And it's like, for me to not talk to like the person that I'm in love with when she's all the way on the other side of the world for a few days was like, and I didn't quite understand why. That's where like the creative storyteller brain starts to go in like these, scary directions. So for me, it's always like, just communicate and then tell me you don't want to communicate for a while.
But why would she say that?
Well, for no, not even necessarily a reason for me, just her anxiety or her life was getting busy and hectic, and she just needs to focus. And like, of course, now as I'm older, it's like I see it. I guess what I really meant by fire in this sense was there was some inclination or some hint that, I don't know, I guess the way we would be emotionally expressive was quite different. And I come from a family of all boys. Hers was mostly girls, and a lot of girl cousins as well. And when I was there, it became, and we're still engaged, it was very hard to do some very regular things. Like going out was very challenging because of like some stuff that I think she was still kind of getting over from her teenage years with like, sadly she had some issues just with her own self-perception. And I think that really impacted her at the time, and to a point where, for me, at least the way that I felt, can't say if this is 100% accurate, but it felt that we really had very little stability within our own unit. Even though like I got along super well with the family, I managed to find work right away in another country, which was pretty cool. I wasn't making tons of money, but I was making enough, and we had all the stuff we needed. But going home was shake the 8 ball, and this is what you're coming home to.
Like in terms of fighting?
Fighting would imply that she and I didn't get along.
So you did get along?
I would say that we got along. I would say that what was happening was mostly internal demons for her that I think were still being expressed. And look, especially if someone who knows both of us is listening, I'm not saying that I didn't necessarily contribute.
Right. I'm
just saying that I don't know to the extent in which that behavior was being expressed. I did not know as a 24, 25-year-old guy away from all of my support and basically surrounded by her, because her family was like mine in the sense that everybody came for Shabbat. Everybody hung out with them. They had 4 girls instead of 4 boys. Like, they were like the place.
Brutal.
So, which is awesome if everything is going well. and I got along really well with her mom and her dad and her siblings. I would say that it wasn't like we fought. It was like something would come up, and the way that it was dealt with internally was usually like, shutting down,
Yeah.
like curling up in a ball on the bed, fetal position in tears.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah. And it was tough because I also really wasn't used to it. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, and then I was so far away and I didn't know who to talk to for so long.
Oh, that's tough.
Because like everyone I knew them. You know what I mean? And so it was like, and I still to this day, I don't like, I actually think she's happily remarried. Well, I don't know, happily, but remarried. So I hope it's happy because like I'm sure she's had some feelings about me. I think we've moved past it. Let's say that.
Right.
But at that time where we both were in our lives, it was extremely challenging to the point that by the time I like was comfortable enough to even talk about it with my parents, which I also remember, it's funny, like, I don't know how you are with your parents, but for me, it was like, I was always close with my friends. And then it was only when I was living across the world, unhappily married, where I was like, I need my parents. Like,
wow.
I was like, I need this, and even like before we got married, there was a moment or an evening where like, I was like, something's really scary here. But it was like 2 a.m. in Alaska, so I couldn't call. And I kept trying to call my mom. And eventually when we spoke about it, she's like, well, if you push off the wedding, will that help? I was like, if we push off the wedding, we're not getting married.
Right.
Which, of course, I was like, duh, then why'd you get married? The other thing is people also tell you, like, look, it's natural for people to get really anxious. And we were very, like, religious. We were not very, almost no touching at all.
Wow.
Yeah. Which was definitely more for her, but also, like, most of our dating was long distance, and we really clicked the very first time we met. So it wasn't like
in person.
Yeah. And it wasn't like I had all those doubts. It was more like as things got more real, I was like, I didn't know how to deal with it. And that by the time I think I started, it was probably a little late. Look, I think in the end, what happened was supposed to happen. It was really sad and it was really hard. And really only in the last year do I think I've actually fully processed it to the point where when the right thing comes up again, I will be ready, and I'll also be aware that it's not going to be easy and frictionless, but that, assuming that it's not tumultuous and eggshell, walking, then we could do it.
Whoa.
And it's because of my previous my most recent real relationship that I had, or long-term relationship that I had, and the cannabis and therapy. It's like, man, this was like, actually starting with my brother who passed, leading to that trauma, then leading to like the kind of abuse. I don't know if you've ever done EMDR therapy.
What does it stand for?
Eye movement desensitization reprogramming.
Whoa, no, I did not. I have not.
It's amazing. I always say for men, I think it's truly amazing. I think if you have real severe trauma, it's really good. Because like we're talkers, we could talk. The problem with me talking is someone can ask me an important question about me and I'll give a real answer, but I will usually not be, or at least wasn't ever like vulnerable, and I didn't really understand the difference between a feeling and a thought. So I'd always answer how I felt in terms of thought. And anyway, this person that I work with, she was amazing, and she going back to what we're talking about relationships and viewing relationships, she started from, well, how did you see your parents show affection? How did you see your parents get angry? So it's like it started with how I even understood relationships to begin with, leading all the way up to where I am now, just in discussion. Then I targeted a memory about my brother when he was sick. He came back from the hospital from a brain surgery. And like that was like the moment for me as a teenager where I knew life was not going to be the same. And you do this, you kind of close your eyes and you tap bilaterally on your body. And, you know, with the appropriate prep and everything, you go in and it's like you're in a, I felt like I was completely immersed in emotion, not like bad or good, just pure feeling. Like I was tingling in my whole body just from doing this and thinking about a moment that I've thought about many, many, many times before. And then you keep going in and you kind of perceive, well, how do you see yourself in that moment? Were you big? Were you small? Were you active? Were you not? And so that taught me a lot, which kind of made a nice headway. And then I needed the second component, which was to get my head out of the haze, as it were, to realize like, oh, so the reason I'm usually anxious is more because I'm actually smoking all the time, which is actually, I'm thinking it's getting me out of it, but it's actually pulling me further. And you only realize that until you get out. So yeah, it's been a hell of a year.
Whoa. So looking back, what's your take on long distance relationships? Did that scar you with it? Or
yeah,
would you...
I tried one somewhat recently. It was very difficult. I don't know if it was the right thing to begin with or not. It's hard for a few reasons. Number one, I get busy doing what I want to do. I think it's harder when there's a time difference because for me, it's like some days I want to write after work. Some days, you know, and it's like, it can be hard. If I'm going to be in a relationship, I want to put in the time and the effort, and with long distance, it either feels like I'm not getting the whole deal. I'm not able to put in the effort I'd want to put in, and you just don't get quite the same like emotional response of being next to someone, you know. So I did try. She was really, really nice, sweet person. But I like after we had met twice, it was like the whole time we're hanging out. Well, it was like first day, oh great, this is amazing. And then by the second day, she's already like, oh, you're gonna have to leave in 4 days or 5, you know, whatever it is, it's like the countdown starts.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So you're never like settled. I don't think that that's true with everybody. You know what I mean? I my friend got married last year, and it was mostly a long-distance relationship. It was pretty quick courtship. They're many years apart age-wise, but they seem happy. You know what I mean? And so it's like that's really the only thing. And he and I talked about it, and I was like, look, I could tell you why it didn't work for me, but A, that was a long time ago, and you're not me, and you know, getting out of college is a totally different world than like you have your own business, you know, it's like all those things are so different, you know? So, yeah. And like, also if she's not super volatile, then chances are, even if there's a problem that comes up that you didn't think about, you could probably work it out, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So,
yeah. And so you're not scarred from it, but you figure, you know what? I prefer something more in my immediate vicinity.
I think I need it. You know, it's like I have thoughts of moving to either Miami or Israel. That could potentially be an option.
To date or to what?
Yeah, well, yeah, to date.
Got it.
Well, to live.
Got it.
So therefore, to date, I could see it because I wouldn't mind having a reason to like get out of LA. But like again, my job is great. I do have other interesting creative opportunities. I love playing beach volleyball, you know, so it's like, which I could do in Israel, so, or Miami. But
true.
But it's, yeah, so for me to leave when I'd spent so many years like kind of pounding on the keyboard and not making any money and doing all that, it's like, oh, I'm actually doing what I want to do. It's going to set me up for even more opportunities to do it. I'm not overworked. I'm actually at the best place in my life to start that relationship because I have time to dedicate to it.
Right.
You know,
here's what I heard, not to tell you what to do,
yeah.
but good times, you know, they say good people don't grow on trees. Good times don't either. So
right.
Good times, I mean, if you come by a good time, like hold on to it for a little bit. Not forever, but
Yeah.
just stick with it and see what happens. That's what I've been told, and I feel like that's
Oh no, for sure. And I have been. The last few weeks have been rough just for whatever. But overall, but even when they're rough, I'm like, I think it's rough because I just know that I want to be sharing this with someone because I actually went out to do the things I wanted to do, and it's happening, and I can do the other things I've wanted to do, but now I don't want to do them until that person's there with me. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
Certain things, meaning like I traveled a lot last year, but now it's like to a point where I was like, there's nowhere else that I'm like dying to go by myself.
Got it.
You know, or like, so yeah.
Interesting. So this is something I'm curious about because maybe I'll end up in a long distance relationship. I don't know.
You're a pilot.
Yeah, there you go. You never know. Was there a fear in you leading up to, what was it like meeting a person who you only spoke with over a phone or Zoom or whatever that might be? Was it the same or different than what you thought? Like, what does that look like? Because I've never done that.
Okay, so this person, like, we started with I'll say that she and I had very good conversational chemistry right away, which is very hard to have, you know, like.
Which could also be a downside because it might just be in the conversation, not in real life.
Right. So I would like, with her specifically, well, first of all, we were kind of set up. So there was some element of like, if you're looking for marriage, you know, okay. So we started texting, and then I think either later that day or the next day we got on a call, and definitely like I knew at that point, like, theoretically on paper things seem okay. There were some questions right from the beginning, and then there are things like little things like, you know, you could FaceTime with someone, it's not always the same. The smell of someone is different.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like the way in which, I mean, you know, it's like all of those things are different. So I don't know if this is advice or whatever, but it's like, I think you just have to like harness what you know is good, and don't try to project anything onto anything else. Like don't try to think about like, oh, do they really look like that? Or, oh, are they a little bit, you know, it's like whatever those questions are, if it's even possible, to not even entertain them and just allow yourself as much as you can to like meet that someone organically. You know what I mean? The problem is we had been talking for a long, like probably a month by the time we met, because we started talking right before I went to Israel for a few weeks. So it was like the buildup was so strong. And for me, it had the opposite impact on her because she had not had quite as many relationships, and I had probably too many. And
you were religious to the point where you weren't touching?
Well, this is recent. So
okay, got it. So this was a different long.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. This is like a recent. This was the first even attempt that I've had since then.
Got it.
And
I was thinking about the marriage thing.
Yeah.
Okay, got.
It was different with the ex-wife because we had spent time together, and I knew I had roughly an academic year left in Seattle before I could go back there. And even before she and I were dating, I had already wanted to go back there. So
you've already spent time with her before you started doing the long distance?
Yes.
Got it. Okay, so let's talk about this straight up long distance.
Yeah. So straight up.
Got it.
And so again, set up, we talk very clear that like, okay, there's something here. There's definitely a connection. There's no question about it. And it was very refreshing to have someone to talk to as well. And then, what I was saying is that anticipation, that buildup, for me, who's traumatized, was like, shit, like, she's in love with me. I like talking to her, but if I'm not feeling it that way when we're together, this is going to be really shitty, you know, like. And so that's already that voice, maybe that same voice to tell you, well, I should look at porn or something. It's already telling me like, oh, this isn't going to work well. You know what I mean? Because I'm scared, you know, and Yeah. So for me, I think it's had that impact where it's like, it seems really difficult for me to feel like I could get to know someone well enough and not have this like up and down and, and stability with it. I don't think that's the case with everyone. I don't. And I think like, hopefully it sounds like the way you came out of your divorce was like, you understand what had happened. You understand why it didn't work. Also, I don't think it uprooted your life maybe quite as much.
No, it's so thankful. It's been the cleanest thing, the most respectful process, and I would do it all over again for what I've learned. It's I really am such a fan. It sounds horrible, such a fan of divorce, but if someone has to go through that process, oh my gosh, take as many notes as you can, because
well, if I told you that story,
the what, your divorce story,
the actual like moment of it, was.
It's tough. It's
well,
tough.
It wasn't even just tough. Every single person that I've told this story to is like,
crazy.
and it wasn't like there was an affair, and it wasn't like, there was nothing scandalous. It was just her dad got involved, and it was very and again, her dad and I were like best friends because they had a youngest son, but I was like the older dude who like could watch Arnold Schwarzenegger movies with it, and like all the manly stuff that he couldn't do with all of his daughters was like, oh yeah, we made beer together, and we did all this stuff, and so, but when he's not happy, and so it was like, and he kind of like took charge of this conversation that she and I were in the middle of having at a time when I was saying like, we were a couple of weeks before Pesach at the time, and what I wanted to do was I needed to, like, I had gone to the therapist that my ex-father-in-law had told me to go to, which I should have known better. And then by the second session, I was just venting because I hadn't had anyone to talk to. So then he's like, okay, sounds like you know what you want to do. Do you have an exit strategy? I was like, whoa, shit. I was like, I'm 25. My life is here. I'm not like I couldn't even say the word divorce. It was so... like alert, I don't know, just it was and so I couldn't even say it, and I wanted to like really reflect on where I was, what other solutions maybe I hadn't considered, and is there anything that I can do to help communicate what's going on so that we can fix this, because there's no question that we were in love. But there were just other things that were making that hard to realize and to experience and to enjoy. But the way they are, meaning that family is like opposite of our family who never talks about how they feel. This is what we talk about all the time, So it's like, well, how? So you know what you want? And I was like, well, no, I don't know what I want. She's like, well, what did you say? And then it was like, I went through it and I was like, I want to wait a few weeks, go through Pesach. When you're on vacation, you're not going to be as stressed, blah, 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 blah. Wasn't an option. And
that's horrible. I mean, when I heard once that, I forget the percentage, but such a high number of divorce cases are because of parents getting involved, be it towards the end, in the middle, beginning. It's so often it starts stirring things up when parents get involved, and it's like
they were supportive in the beginning, honestly. So it's not like I wouldn't blame anybody except for just what happened. You know what I mean? I don't like I have a whole different narrative on my most recent relationship, but that's another story for another
story
time.
For another time.
Yeah. How long do these go for? This is
incredible. No, listen.
We just keep drinking the vodka.
Amazing.
Yeah.
No, this is the other thing I realized talking with people is that there's so flippin' much to talk about.
Oh yeah.
Like, it's crazy. I had people on here, I'm telling you, before they came on, they're like, okay, first of all, did you prepare questions? What's the format? Like, and in my head, I get where they're coming from, kind of, because most people are not familiar with this, but as someone who does this and talks to people, it's almost comical, because the thing about this that fascinates me the most is you could put, I won't say everyone, I used to, but not anymore.
Yeah, not everyone, but
almost everyone in that seat. And not because I'm good, or pretty much anyone. If two people sit in front of each other and just start talking, like we said in the beginning, getting in a car and not having destination. It's incredible what there is to talk about, and it's fascinating, and that's why I don't want to like jobs. I don't want to limit it to what do you do for a living. It's interesting.
Yeah,
it's a part of who you are.
Yeah,
it's part of your story.
The Yo Show.
But there's the Yo Show.
You made me think of how I had to relate your story to another story, and now I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. See, I'm falling into my own traps.
Hey, focus on me.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, I'm the subject of today's podcast, so I have to relate all the stories. But now that I've talked about not remembering, I've even forgotten what it was. The point that I was relating.
The Yo Show.
The Yo Show.
The Yo Show.
Welcome to the Yo Show.
Yo Show.
Featuring guest Zach Grashin.
Zach.
All right.
Incredible. Zach, this was fun. How long we sat? Any guess?
Oh, you're timing it. I have no idea. I was
not timing it. It's on the screen.
I was gonna guess 90.
90 minutes. 90 minutes is an hour and a half.
Yeah.
We sat for 2.5 hours.
Okay. I thought it was longer because I was like, we did go through a lot. Like, it was also the longest conversation I've ever had about porn. But it was also a very high level conversation about porn. So that was cool.
It's good, and and honestly, I'll tell you this. I tell this to everyone. Talk about it as much as you can. Not to tell you what to do, but the more we talk about it, the more you don't know if the one you're talking with is one of those people who walks around life thinking, God, I must be the only crazy person who watches this much porn, when they're not. And the only way they'll find out that they're not is by just talking about it.
So I'll tell you, okay, so here's my final send-off story that has nothing to do with porn, but sort of related to what you just said. More related to the kind of person that I am, because death has been a part of my life in a lot of interesting ways. In our community, so for those who don't know, I'm the youngest of 4 boys. One of those 4 brothers, the one who's in between me and the third brother, passed away when I was 15. He was almost 17. And that became a huge component of my life, a huge component of why I write, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Fast forward, I don't know how many years, but there was another kid in our community in Seattle who also got cancer. He was 13 or maybe 12 when he got it, and super sick. I mean, he was in the hospital most of the time and passed away, I think, like the week of his bar mitzvah. It was really tragic. It was, about as awful as when my brother passed away. It was just like the same kind of thing. I didn't know the kid so well. I knew his parents. I knew him, but I wasn't like super close, even though I worked a lot with the kids in the community. Long story short, they asked me to talk to a bunch of the kids individually and sort of collectively. And I was like, I'm not a counselor, I was like, I just wrote a piece about my brother that got published, and I didn't kill myself, at 15. Right. So like that's my accomplishment. And but I spoke with like 2 of his best friends, the kid who passed away, and that I think had an impact on them. But I like didn't remember talking to another kid who was part of the youth groups and stuff. He wasn't in our like neighborhood community, so he was a bit, he's a bit like outsider-ish. And I didn't even think he knew the kid who passed away, but he was very sad because everyone was, it was like everyone was mourning and everyone was grieving. And we spoke, and I have no idea what I said to him. I remember what I said to the other 2 kids. And then, I don't know, however many months later, he told me, he's like, I just want you to know that I was really, like, he goes, I didn't have a girlfriend. Kids made fun of me. And then Sam died. And he's like, I was ready to just walk in front of a car and end it. And he goes, but you talked to me. And he didn't say any of this when we were talking. I didn't know that this is what he was feeling. I just thought he was sad. We were all really, really sad. And going back to the idea of like just saying hi to someone, just acknowledging that person, just letting them know like it's okay to be in pain. It's also okay to not feel like you're at your best. Saved this kid's life, according to him. But if you don't talk about it and you're scared to like, do something nice or just give someone a little bit of time, it's you don't realize how much of an impact you can make. So these conversations, again, is why I kind of like podcasts. You never know, like, you might hear something brilliant or hilarious or revelatory, and it's just like, it only happens by just
100%.
doing that. So
100%.
thank you.
Zach,
Found it.
thanks for doing it.
The Yo Show flying out of here. Here's the pilot.
The Yo Show. Boom.
And we out.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible.